Hey guys, I keep coming back because this is the only place to get called illustrious, and I like it. Yeah, yeah. I've never gotten magnanimous like some of your hosts do. I'm still working towards that. That's on my stretch goal list to get called magnanimous. Okay, okay, good. That's something to work for. I'll keep my nose to the grindstone so I can get there. Oh, oh, I can't wait to get there. Um, that's when you get tenure. Once you get Geek Evolution tenure, like 10 years in, then you can finally wicked slick. That's what when you replace you, then you're wicked slick. That's when you dub that to someone. Oh no! Oh, that was a really
Oh
lopsided
man,
conversation.
that was all real. I apologize, everybody. I don't know how that particular slider got muted. That never happens. Anyway,
Weird.
welcome everybody back to Marvel Mania. We were just chatting about how I have never apparently called DJ magnanimous before, and you guys missed it. But I was saying there are other words that I've never called anybody on the channel that you have to be here with me for a lot longer to get to, like bodacious and wicked slick. I don't think I've ever used wicked slick before.
Not to my knowledge, but who knows? You in the comments, let us know if you're a super fan and Cap has broken out that compliment before.
Yeah, I tip my hat to you if you remember that, because that'd be nuts. Anyway, tonight we need to jump straight away into things because we're doing
Yes.
a long one tonight. Tonight we're doing, of course, the epic Avengers Infinity War, arguably the first of a two-parter. It just depends on what camp you lie in and how you want to look at it. DJ, in my mind, this movie should be older than 2 years. It feels like we've lived with it longer than that.
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, internet time, it goes both ways, right? Like sometimes it feels like it just happened, but it happened a long time ago. But then because it's so densely talked about for those 2 years, it does seem like it was a long time ago. It goes that way too sometimes. And
Yeah,
this is one of those
Yeah,
cases.
that's a really good point where like you spend all your time talking about one specific thing for a while. And again, it feels like we lived with this for a long time because you had Endgame just the year after it. So, I mean, Endgame even feels like we've been sitting on it for a lot longer than we have been. That was just last year,
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and we haven't had any movies to talk about since,
besides
pretty
Spider-Man.
much. So yeah, I
And
mean,
yeah, and because of the
like this
pandemic,
year at
there
all,
were
not just
yeah,
not
there's at
just
least
MCU.
one that was supposed to have come out already, and then some Disney Plus shows, and we haven't gotten any of that yet. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think that makes it feel a lot longer as well. Well, we're going to have plenty to talk about. I don't think we're going to have to be concerned whatsoever, not that we usually are anyway, but about dead air, because we have like 500 characters to chat about. It's going to be a lot harder to make sure that everything gets said that we want to get said. Of course, we're going to be looking at comments throughout the show. If you're watching live, thanks very much for being here with us. I'm seeing quite a few people there in the comments right now. If you want to, as always, make sure that a question or a topic about the film gets brought up. You can leave a super chat in any dollar amount, and we will make sure and address you that way. We will continue to look at the comments, and DJ will be playing moderator a little bit like he usually does on the Captain Logan show, and so and I'll be looking at it as well. So we'll get to some stuff that's not super chatted as well. But this one, it's going to be harder than usual, I think, to not just stay kind of glued to the screen. So I'm going to be looking back as often as possible, make sure that you guys can help us direct the conversation. Make sure that you've got Infinity War rigged up. It is on Disney Plus, of course, like the majority of the MCU. You can also obviously get out your DVD, your Blu-ray, however you want to watch it, your digital copy, get it past any menus, get it to timestamp 0, and I always suggest that you have your subtitles on as well, and get ready to press play whenever I say now. DJ, are you ready, buddy?
I'm ready. Just turned on my subtitles. Glad you said that.
Yeah, it's always a good idea. I should say that more often. But yeah, because it's a lot harder to comment on and remember dialogue
Oh yeah, definitely.
When you're trying to listen to kind of two audio tracks at the same time. All right, here we go. Everybody good? Everybody ready to roll? Let's do it. Everybody, please press play right now. I don't know if anybody else has this, but for me, because I was watching this again the other day in preparation for this, and I remember having this problem before on the Blu-ray. This movie has weird sound mixing. It's a lot quieter than it ought to be. Like, I have to crank my volume up a lot louder than I do some of the other MCU movies to hear this. It's very strange.
I didn't notice that when I watched it last night, but.
And that's why I hesitated to even bring it up, because I bet it's just me. I bet everybody else is gonna be like, no, I don't have any problem with it at all. But I had to up my and in two different places yesterday, because I started it on one projector and I came down here and finished it on the other one, and I had it with two different speakers from completely different brands.
I wonder if it's a Disney Plus thing, because I'm watching it on my digital
copy.
Like I
said, I had it with the Blu-ray too, I thought.
Oh,
but
maybe so. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, so that's interesting. That's the first time there's no music with the logo. It's just like you just hear that distress signal. Kenneth Branagh talking.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that was was that Kenneth Branagh?
That's what they said, yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Now that was not me going, wait a minute, there's no sound, turn it way up. But at first yesterday I was like, wait a minute, do we have our sound on? Oh, that's right. Yeah, this movie opens appropriately, really ominously that way. And I like that. That immediately, of course, sets the tone and creates that sense of suspense and gets us ready for the gravitas of Thanos.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It does go a little too far with the score in this scene. Like I don't know if it's when it first starts or when Thanos comes out, where it goes bum bum bum. Like, it's a little too much. I kind
of like that though. I mean, we've been waiting for this for years. I think they've earned that.
Yeah, it's just funny.
And even with what I think is a reinvent, and we'll talk about this, of course, a reinvention of the Thanos that the folks that were initially thinking about Thanos with the MCU must have been thinking of. I still think that they've deserved that sort of bombast, and that this character, flawed though I think he is on paper, deserves that bombast.
Yeah. And this is so weird. Considering the last time we were on this ship a couple weeks ago was the end of Ragnarok, with like them just joking around, and now, well, you're all dead.
It's like we're in two completely different universes tonally.
Yeah.
It's very strange. And again, I don't mean to be a hypocrite. I love that shot. The reveal of his face is just wonderful, because I forgot he came out in silhouette last like that. That's good stuff.
Oh yeah, that's Ninja Turtle stuff right there.
Yeah, and it's also just real comic booky.
Yeah.
And that's
splash page.
That's my big positive for this, just superficially as an experience. It's real comic booky. Like, I've probably said this before, but like, Avengers was the first time I felt like I was seeing a like real comic event put on screen. And then Civil War, I didn't think it was possible to recreate that feeling where it was like it was for the first time. And then Civil War did that. Infinity War sort of did it a third time for me. I think all three of those managed to elevate that feeling for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's got to be hard to do. I don't know how they recreated that magic, like you said, 3 times, but they pulled it off pretty well. And then Endgame has like a different kind of magic, it's weird. Endgame has nostalgia for a series that's only, I guess, it's 10 years old at this point. So I guess that does kind of count as nostalgia.
But yeah, it banks on nostalgia for itself, and of course we'll talk about when we get there and discuss whether that's effective and if that's a problem or not. What I was going to say a minute ago is I don't want to be hypocritical about this when I say that this movie tonally suddenly feels like it's in a different universe, because I obviously want these films to be able to feel like different things, and to not all be, exactly the same experience every time, and just be, plugging in for a formula and have the same feel all the time. But like we talked about when we did Ragnarok a couple weeks ago, that just felt so far afield and like it wasn't taking itself seriously enough with the material that it was dealing with, that it's weird coming into this because this has the tone I would have expected from Ragnarok.
Yeah, definitely. And where Thor, where we wanted him to be in Ragnarok.
So you think that music's going too over the top? Because I love it. I think it's really good.
It's just a preference thing.
Oh, that's fair. I like this score overall. I think it's one of the more effective Marvel scores,
yeah,
particularly right at the end over the credits. I think that stuff is friggin' great.
And it weaves the Avengers theme in really well. What is your thought process on why he sends Thor or Hulk right there instead of Thor or anyone else?
What do you mean?
Why does he send Hulk to Earth?
Thanos?
No, Heimdall.
Oh, Heimdall. Yeah. Sorry. I was looking at comments. And I was thinking of other things. And I was like, what are we talking about right now? I don't know. I honestly, I'm sorry. I've never given that any thought. I don't know. I think he leaves Thor here because Thor needs to look really sad and
well, yeah.
be depressed about what we just did.
Yeah, I know why he's there. Thor needs to see Heimdall die, and that's part of his arc, and we need Thor to go on his quest, blah, blah,
and
blah.
he also needs to be there when Loki seems to die as well.
Yeah, I've just heard people talk about why did you send Hulk to Earth instead of... But anyway, it's not that important.
No, I mean, it kind of is, because it's sort of, you're right, I just never thought of it, because it kind of reads like it's just what needs to happen to get characters from point A to point B and to be where they need to be for particular plot points. Yeah. And this and Endgame both, but Endgame probably more so, have that problem in quite a few places.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things with this, that just for this movie to exist, you kind of have to have some...
Yeah, Mutal, I misspoke. I think ultimately he's dead as well, and a lot of people thought that Loki was probably going to be alive after this, and I was pretty sure, pardon me, from the line "No Resurrections" that he wasn't. I felt like that was the movie promising us that deaths were going to count. Obviously, when you get to the end and we start poofing people, you're going to be kind of an idiot if you think that, that none of those characters are coming back, that everybody died, especially because we knew that some of them had movies coming up. Spider-Man's going to make it, guys. He has a movie right after this one that we know is set after it. But also, there's the thing with Endgame where we set up a Loki from another timeline. And it's like, well, yes, of course, he's going to replace this one. And immediately when he shows up in the Avengers timeline and then disappears, I was like, okay, so that's how we're going to do his TV show.
Yeah, that's how they did it. Obviously with Gamora too. That was their out.
I've always been a little bit annoyed about the fact that we destroyed Xandar off screen.
Okay.
Because we had to watch an entire third act at the end of Guardians where we were supposed to kind of care about those people to some degree. And it was like a big battle for Xandar, and then they're just gone now. We killed off that. As far as I can tell, maybe I'm wrong about this, it seems like the entire civilization is gone seconds before this movie opens. And maybe that's supposed to be like, oh man, this is such a big deal. We killed off this whole civilization that you knew about already before the movie starts. Like, that's how big the stakes are. But I think it's a little strange to get rid of something that we spent a whole third act on and not even show any of it.
Real quick, that's so gruesome. Like, the way his face looks when he just strangles him and then it does a little jiggle. Ugh, it looks gross. Like his head's not attached. But yeah, so I listened to the Russos talk about what you're saying, and they felt it would have just been repetitive because there's so much action in this movie, and they felt like that kind of action scene, you would know what was going to happen. It's just like Thanos going up, and for me personally, I wouldn't want to see that because it's just Thanos going up against a bunch of people in ships. Like, I don't
You
know.
wouldn't need to
It's none of our main
spend.
characters.
You wouldn't need to spend any time on it. It could have been 30 seconds. I just think we should have seen the end of it.
Yeah, like open there.
Yeah, I just think we should have seen the remnants of it. I don't need to see them have any chance against Thanos. But you should at least see some of the ships blow up. I think it's because, and the main reason I'm saying that is because I don't think a lot of people realized that's who we were talking about. Like, we spent all this time on Xandar and Guardians, and you may not remember the name of that species. They just, kind of, in a quick throwaway line, say Xandar. And it's like, you have to be a big Guardians fan to even remember what that is.
Yeah,
that's what I don't like about it.
It can feel weird for some people that he just shows up with one of the stones.
So I said I love the soundtrack. It does, of course, the Avengers theme does get really redundant, and it drives my son Jason crazy.
Really?
Because we watched Infinity War the day of or the day before we went to Endgame. And in the theater, and by the time we got to Endgame, he was so tired of dun 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 dun, because we also had been watching a lot of the Marvel movies up to that. I don't think we finished all of them, but he had seen Avengers and Age of Ultron in pretty close succession as well. So by the time he got to Endgame, it was stuck in his head for like a couple of weeks. And he was like, "Oh my God, Dad, why does every one of these have to open like that?" Here it is! Dun, 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 dun! Dun, dun!
That's one that I never get tired of.
I think it's a really good theme. I've always loved it.
Yeah, Alan Silvestri, man. He crushed
People
it.
say, yeah, he's great. People say that the MCU doesn't have enough catchy, hummable scores and themes, and that one certainly is. And I think it ranks up. I've never done a top 10 superhero themes or scores for movies.
We should do that.
I've always wanted to do that. I just have never gotten around to it. But that would be in there probably. I mean, I think that ranks with I think it ranks with Superman and Batman. I think it's up there.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not X2. It's not quite. Red Davis, I don't think seeing Xandar is all that important, but I can see your point, Cap. Yeah, like I said, I don't think we need to spend any time on it. I think it's just weird they name drop it like that, and we don't see it at all. It's not a big problem.
Got a super chat from TH1.
There's way bigger issues in this movie than that.
Yeah. Sorry, can't stay. New episode of This Is Us tonight. Who do you think is the MVP character in Infinity War, and who is the worst valued? You guys rock.
Ooh. What do you mean by worst value? What does that mean?
No, maybe the least utilized or the.
Okay,
worst.
so so MVP and least valuable player then, yeah.
LVP.
Right, LVP. Oh, I don't know why I feel the need to mention this real quick before we get to that super chat, but for some reason, Wong's line about a tuna melt always stuck with me. Because I wouldn't say I think it's just his delivery, and I really like Wong for some reason. He goes, I wouldn't say no to a tuna melt, and just the way he says it.
Well, it's nice. We don't get any like besides this scene with him and Pepper, and
a lot of downtime.
That scene with Wong, we don't get any like personal life stuff in this at all. Because once it gets going, it just keeps going and going.
We don't have time. We have 5,000 characters to juggle.
I know. So those little personal touches, and there's like a little short scene with Scarlet Witch and Vision for like a split second before they get dragged into it too. So
well, with that criticism nice. I opened with, I do want to say I sympathize with how hard it is to juggle, of course, this many characters, and the Russos are the masters at that. The way they did it in Civil War is amazing, and I think they do a pretty spectacular job of it here too. It just doesn't give us, like you said, much time for personal time and downtime and just life stuff. Just like, what are these characters' interests and passions and hobbies and things that define them as people outside of being superheroes. When you have a Galactus level or a Thanos level situation, you don't really expect a lot of that kind of stuff, and you hope that there's enough of it in their individual movies. And in some of them there is, and in some of them arguably there's not. But so I'd say Thor does not have enough of that kind of stuff. We complain about that all the time with the lack of mythology on Asgard and the lack of the political stuff and all of that. But even Doctor Strange does, I think, maybe a better job of that.
Yeah. I mean, and this is, we're gonna say a lot. This is a movie that like can't exist. This movie can only be made with 18 movies leading up to it. Like the way it's structured, and like you said, if you just made this movie, it would be received terribly because nobody would be invested.
Yeah, that's true. See, I thought you were going to say because nobody would be able to follow it, but you're right. It's a lot more about whether you'd have any investment in these characters. You have to bring a lot to it because it doesn't have time to reacclimate you. And the Russos said that coming into this. They said they debated about it quite a bit, and they decided this was the one where we'd say, okay, at this point, we're going to assume if you're here, you've seen at least some of these before. Even Civil War, they were still to some degree. I think maybe even at that point they had sort of thrown their hands in the air, but Civil War, I think even at that point they were still saying we want to make it a movie that stands on its own and that you don't necessarily have to have seen anything before. Obviously, it's informed by a lot of events and things, but I think they were working really hard to still make that a thing that you could walk into. And I don't know how well they succeeded at that. I don't know how well you can succeed at that. But this, they really were done trying that. Because it's going to be 4 hours if you even remotely attempt that.
Yeah, that would be so much exposition, so much reminding us who these characters are.
So we need to get to that super chat. And go ahead. Thanks, Ponder. I was about to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, LVP is Banner, right?
Yeah.
For me, like,
he is up there. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that is just out of place, or because there's a lot of different ways you could answer that. It's like who gets, you could just say like who gets the most and who gets the least to do. You could answer it that way. That's of course not as interesting to me. And obviously
stuff to do, but it's not good, and it's like it's even worse. I don't know. I just don't like him in this movie at all.
Obviously, the movie is, has the particular characters that it most wants to focus on, and the movie is more about. Although I don't think there's as much like individual character arcs as there is like an entity as the Avengers that's made up of all the other characters here. Like there are character beats certainly, but and also there's the fact that it is in its way kind of half a story. Like there is a cliffhanger. It's not these are two very different feels of movies, like we said earlier, but the story's not exactly done by the time you get to the end of it. So like you certainly can't say that Tony Stark has had like a fully realized character in this movie. He needs that second movie before he gets that. Peter Parker as well. It's with that character, it's like oh god, I'm too young to die. That's if there's an arc, that's it. Yeah. It's not really an arc so much as just like a sad moment. Everybody gets some kind of really kind of emotional beat.
Ponder, you're right. He says no, it's not Banner, it's easily Drax. Well, yeah, but I don't even consider Drax a character at this point. Like I'm already coming off Guardians 2 where I didn't like Drax, so yeah, I don't even think of him. He's just like a part of that.
I still would put Banner over him just because Drax is kind of there and not really intended to like. I don't really want to pick a character that's kind of just there to have a couple of fun moments as opposed to actually be to be a character that really fits into the narrative where it's about them at all and they have like a place in the puzzle. Like Banner has a place in the puzzle and I don't like it. I think I have to agree with you that it's that, and I blame that on Ragnarok because I don't think we would have gone there with him if it hadn't been for how much of a joke he was in that movie.
Yeah, and I at the end of this don't even know what they were trying to do. Like, what is the whole point? Like, Hulk just doesn't want to help because Thanos beat him up, and like that never gets resolved.
It never gets resolved because it's already been resolved by the time you get to Endgame. So it's like, well, now they've merged and they've become one person. We didn't get to see that happen. Banner never talks about it. The Russos said that Banner was supposed to have kind of a character arc between the 3 movies, that there was sort of a Hulk trilogy embedded in there, and it was more like checking in with him with story beats inside of a story we didn't get to see, and that I fundamentally have issues with for that character.
Yeah, I don't understand what, like, being maybe I don't understand why being a hero, like, because he was. It might have something to do with Ragnarok. Like he was the winner, the champion for like years, and even when he lost, he was still like cheated to be the champion by the system, and now he gets beat by Thanos, so he's being a baby. I don't know. It might make sense, but I don't. It doesn't make it interesting.
I like this scene a lot, and I think it's because these actors are all treating this with the weight that it needs for us to feel like it's an event. Like, everybody in this scene is going, it's a big deal that we're all on screen together right now. And we know the audience is going to be excited about that. And they're treating it differently than if they were each respectively in their own movies. And it feels even bigger than the crossover stuff we've done before. I love Tony's line and the way Downey delivers Earth is closed today. Just the way I love that. I think I kind of have to say Tony is the MVP, which is the obvious place to go, and like he's going to be, I guess, in Endgame as well, at least story-wise, because I mean, it's not that it's not anybody else's movies, but I mean, it's still Tony's world and everybody's living in it to some degree, right? Like, we are really wrapping up everything character-wise about him that we started with the first Iron Man. You could argue that there's some double beats where we kind of already did some of that and we're doing it again, but like, but I don't know. I guess I'm mostly saying that just from an acting perspective. Like, I really like Downey's performance in this movie.
I think from a character perspective, it's probably Gamora.
Yeah. Well, and I teared up in the theater at that scene, and I never thought that actress would have the ability to do that because I didn't used to like her, and I have rethought Zoe Saldana since that scene because I think she's spectacular there. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't know. I was thinking overall, I was thinking of like, because she's not in as much of it as he is, and I don't know. I'm finding that for some reason to be a really difficult question to answer.
Yeah, that's a hard one. We'll have to noodle that the whole movie and maybe talk about it at the end.
Because I almost just want to go to like different categories. You know what I mean? There almost needs to be like an Oscars for this, where it's like MVP on what level exactly? Because you're right, on a story level, it probably is her or arguably Tony.
Yeah.
Lewis Cox, thanks for the super chat, man. Yeah, I have also been playing Miles Morales. It looks like he didn't finish his sentence, so there wasn't really a question there.
I'm in suspense. You said,
yeah, you said it's. I don't know.
It's.
Yep.
Maybe great.
Maybe I will be reviewing that soon.
Cool. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I'm enjoying it.
So what's crazy? We're a little bit past it now, but you were talking about how much gravitas that scene had. That tracking shot, that like oneer where Tony comes out of the building and walks down the street, shot in Pinewood Studios with a green screen.
Yeah,
that's
and
crazy.
It looks effortless. Yep.
It looks like they're on a. Well, now they are on a street in Atlanta here for some of this fight scene, but that oneer.
Oh, interesting.
Somehow they did it in the studio here in Atlanta, which is crazy.
I would argue the way. Sorry, I got distracted. The way Doctor Strange said "unbreakable" was weird. He like puffed his cheeks out like "unbreakable," and it's like I don't even know how the sound. That must have been ADR'd because the way the word came out of his mouth could not have been the way it was on set or on location.
He actually said preposterous, but they changed it.
But they went back and dubbed it to be unbreakable. That's fantastic.
Or he was trying to say penguin, but that actor can't say penguin, so...
Weird ADR choice. Unbreakable.
Oh, Lewis Cox puts in another super chat. Thanks, man. He said, it's good. Sorry.
It is
got
good.
Cut off.
So far, I'm really liking it. I got stuff, but... It's better than I was led to believe. Anyway.
Well, that's anything on the internet these days.
So, I don't know what it is between CG and City Streets and CG and like Wakanda, but I feel like this stuff all looks a lot better than some of the third act stuff. Am I right about that? Which
seems like it would be backwards, right? Because we see City Streets all the time, so we should be tuned in to what makes it look real, and we should know when it's not. And we don't see like Wakandan jungles all the time or mountains, so you'd think it would be the other way around.
And I just think all this action is more cleverly storyboarded and feels, again, more comic booky than some of the stuff that we get a little bit later. Like, don't get me wrong, there's some great, epic stuff in the big Wakanda fight, but some of it might just be because of placement, because this is such an epic action sequence right at the beginning of your movie that could have been the last scene, in a lot of these, and that is clearly intentional. But I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say real quick, why did they do that hand thing? They kind of shot themselves in the foot with that. Like, oh, you can just cut off someone's... No, yeah, Doctor Strange cut off the monster's arm, like, effortlessly. Why would you do that? You know you're opening yourself up to, like, why didn't they just cut off Thanos' arm? I'm not gonna do that this whole movie, like, oh, why didn't do this? Why didn't do this? Because you can do that forever in any movie. But, like, you showed how easy it could be to...
Here's the thing, though. Yeah, when you're inconsistent in the logic or in the story logic or the character logic, no, you should ask those questions. And, yeah, it might seem irritating, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? But the movie is in places asking us to ask those questions, and then it doesn't ultimately pan out the way it ought to. So no, I think you should talk about that stuff. I forgot somebody got their arm cut off. I thought you were just going to say the circle thing with Doctor Strange in the first place and the lameness of that if you're Eric. I thought that's where you were going.
I don't mind that. That's fine. I like that effect. I forgot he hated that. But yeah, I'm not trying to be nitpicky. Like, I don't care that they didn't do that to Thanos, but like, why did you go do it there? It's weird to add that in.
I do care about that. I am going to complain about that. I really am. Because when you get to Endgame, we make too big of a deal out of cutting off body parts. And it feels retroactive, like... And it's weird because these movies were made back-to-back. But it feels like they were responding to an audience complaining that they didn't think to just cut his arm off instead of trying to get the gauntlet off. But it's even a problem just inside of this movie, even before you get to Endgame. Because when... Thanos, I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but at the end, when Thanos whispers to Thor, you should have gone for the head, it makes everybody look really stupid.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, it's like they think drawing attention to it, they're like, oh, don't worry, guys, we know that. Well, don't tell us, because now we're thinking about that, too. Like,
yeah, because you could almost... I don't know, you could almost ignore it as a conceit or something if they don't bring it up, but the fact that they do, it doesn't... I don't know, it doesn't make the story logic okay because, like you said, it just kind of amplifies it. Because it's like, well, in the scene, I'm kind of wondering why they didn't think to do that. But it might just be that they're all just altruistic enough or whatever, they don't think to, like, maim and dismember people or whatever. But obviously Thor would, like...
Yeah, Thor's not like that at all. This is so jarring. I know we have to meld these kind of two universes together and these different movies together, but like when you're it's like this. We just had this dark battle that ended with them like all in shambles, and then like he's calling Cap on the phone, and he pull up Cap's number, and then it starts playing the song. I was like, whoa!
But it's supposed to be jarring. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the juxtaposition of that is fantastic because they're still separate right now. You know,
yeah,
so you've seen a very, regular MCU, relatively down to earth, action sequence like you've seen in all these other, Avengers movies and the separate characters, and then you get to, oh, okay, we're just in a Guardians film now. Like, I really like the way the Guardians are utilized overall in this, and I'm with you on Drax, but now we're just being consistent with the last movie we did with him, which is not great, and I'm with you. He does have the best joke in the movie, but it's not, it doesn't mean that I'm cool with what we're doing with him, personality-wise still, where he's just kind of an idiot. But I still love Why is Gamora. I don't care what anybody says, I think it's great. But with, But going into this movie, I really expected them to, like, open the movie and not be in any more of it. I really didn't think that they were going to factor into the story very much.
Yeah, well, they kind of have to, because Gamora's so... But, of course, we didn't know how tied Gamora was going to be. Just because she was his daughter doesn't mean she was going to be a huge part of this movie.
Well, and we also didn't know how much... Endgame was going to be a second half of the same story. Like, it ends up being much more of its own movie than we expected, even though I say character arc-wise it is kind of the second part of a story. But, like, originally, when they were calling it, Infinity War Parts 1 and 2, I wasn't expecting a second movie that would have a bunch of time travel in it. I was expecting Infinity Gauntlet more or less adapted in 4 or 5 hours. And so when we first heard that the Guardians was the first stuff they were shooting, I was like, oh, okay, that's going to be because they only need them for a day or two, and that they shot them for like one scene. And it turns out that's not the case. But I figured that all the Gamora stuff would be in the second part.
Okay.
Back when we first got word of what they were shooting when, because it was hard not to keep up with the production of this because it was obviously such a big deal. I was constantly hearing about it.
Yeah, it's so weird. No one in the world called that these two movies, the star of this movie would be Gamora and the star of Endgame would be
Nebula.
Nebula. What? No
yeah.
So
well,
weird.
You might to some degree if you know Infinity Gauntlet, because Nebula is really important to the end of that story. And she does end up being really important to the end of this story, but in very, very different ways. In the comics, spoiler alert, Nebula gets the gauntlet off Thanos.
Oh,
That's how they beat him. There's a distraction, and she just goes up behind him and takes it off.
Glad they didn't do that in this. Thanos, look over there.
Well, it's funny, though, because they kind of tried to do that with Mantis, and it just didn't work out. It's like, get his gauntlet off. No, I still say it's not a nitpick to say, why didn't somebody just think to cut his arm off? Because, like we said earlier, well, we've done that with other things, and the stakes are huge. There's a... And we'll talk about this with Thanos later, and I'll try not to spend the entire time talking about this. This is why so far I've avoided it. But there's a whole lot of, with Thanos, the how come you didn't just do it this way question. But for me, it's more, I'm asking logical questions that I don't understand why my characters in the film aren't asking. And it takes me out. It walls them off from me. Because if I'm supposed to see them as real people within the fiction I'm watching, I don't understand why what I think are, pretty obvious questions coming to my mind while I'm watching, nobody else thinks to ask. And so you kind of just have to make the logical leaps of, just nobody thought of that. And
yeah, I think it's even more than that. I think it's like they're kind of they're in trouble. They're kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't. It's like they want to have their cake and eat it too. Like they want him to be, they have to, because of what this is, how long this is taking to build up. He has to be so powerful, but then like he can't be that powerful, or else the movie's over in 5 minutes.
Well, and Daniel Davis kind of echoes you when he says because otherwise there wouldn't be a plot. But the thing is, they could have been smarter about it than there are. There are certain gimmies I'm going to give you on that. They just go too far with it. I'm supposed to basically just not be critical of Thanos at all because he's impossible. Okay, then why even take the effort to try to make him sympathetic then?
Yeah, that's the thing.
But we'll talk about all that later.
We'll talk about it once he starts getting the stones. It's like yeah, we'll talk about it.
How do you feel about the comedy in this scene and the way Thor is used comedically versus the comedy that he had in Ragnarok?
It's a little better. There is remnants of it, like we actually just there where he's like, "How do you open this thing with a 4-digit code? Maybe my birthday or something." He starts getting a little riffy again. That's a little goofy. But
improv comedy.
But they suppress him mostly for this scene, and it's mostly the Guardians being super goofy, which is that Guardians 2 humor that I don't like either, where they're all like just like, this is a man, look at his muscles, and like that's annoying to me. But for the most part, Thor's pretty straight in the scene.
And it's weird because Star-Lord is completely in character, and you expect this kind of childishness from him.
Yeah, that's who Star-Lord is. But I don't understand why everyone, unless they're just doing it to mess with them. But it seems like they're just super impressed to see a guy who's not even as big as Drax is. I don't know why Drax is acting like he's such a huge, muscular guy.
I do like all words are made up, though.
Yeah.
Because that's just true.
It just goes back to that thing, like, and they draw attention to it in this movie where Thor acts like he says he's 1,500 years old.
Yeah,
I need him to act like a 1,500-year-old. I need him to act like somebody.
That calls way too much attention to that. But at the same time, he's being pretty childish at the beginning of his first movie and doesn't feel like he's 1,500 years old. So I mean, devil's advocate, yeah, you can argue that he's been that way going all the way back.
That's true.
And of course, I don't want to reiterate everything we said in the Ragnarok commentary, but he. You expect him to not regress and to learn the things he's learned and to, apply those things. So you want him to be more mature, but you also don't want him to lose his charm. And I just feel like very often that's the line that's difficult to walk with him. He finds it again here. I think this is the scene that is the transition between Ragnarok and this movie, because once we get past this scene, he's the Thor that I've wanted all along. And I like things about him in this scene too. But you're right, there's still remnants of that.
Yeah, and I think that's just him and Chris Pratt getting on set together and going back and forth and just like joking or like trying to one up each other. That's just what happens when you're on set with two comedian guys. But yeah, it's not bad. I love this stuff. Watching this again made me so excited for the show.
Same here. Yeah, the Wanda and Vision stuff.
And they're just such cool characters, and that ending is so freaking heart-wrenching.
Well, you feel like you're watching a scene in a TV show that you wished you'd gotten to see, right? Like, this feels like it's half a season into a show or something.
Yeah.
There's this whole drama with these guys that we've not gotten to see, and all this chemistry they've built up. It really feels like these two actors have been working together a lot longer than they have.
Oh, definitely.
Spectacular.
She's all, she's running around hiding she's in hiding because of the whole Accord situation. Right. He's sneaking away. He keeps sneaking away back and forth from Tony. So there's all this stuff that's been going on that we just don't know about.
I want him to do like a Spock thing from Star Trek 4 where he has to put something over his head so that nobody can see that. Oh, he's able to just make it disappear when people can't see it. Okay.
Yeah, he can change.
I forgot about that. Yeah, because he had in that scene, and I was thinking, like, what is the point of making yourself look human if you still have this big diamond in your forehead, or this big gem in your forehead?
No, that's the thing. That's the thing. In 2022, everyone's gonna have those embedded in their heads.
I love how. Oh, okay. Well, I hope that it's not like our entire life force, where like if you break it, we're just dead. Just all of our memory is in there. I sure hope you put today's experiences in the cloud.
Yeah, make sure you close all the cabinets and don't run into it. It's dead.
It's just real durable, and it has its own force field. I mean, there's lots of redundancies in place. But, no, I like how, again, kind of intentionally jarring it is that we just jump right into that scene with the two of them, and for a second, you might not even know who you're looking at until you until you realize Wanda's there. Because I'm pretty sure this is the first time we see him out of that makeup.
Yeah, I think you're right. Definitely. I remember in the theater being like, whoa, who's this guy? Because I'm not familiar with that actor as much as...
Boy, Bentley could not have imagined when he was just voicing Jarvis in that first Iron Man that he would end up doing all of this and then get his own TV show.
Oh, it's crazy.
12 years later.
Well, I bet you Coulson had the same thing.
Yeah.
He was just a cameo in every movie, and then gets his
I would love
TV show that goes
5
seasons or 6 seasons.
Years from now, though, I would love to know how he feels about that TV show, because I'm sure he really likes the paycheck, but I wonder what he actually thinks about, overall some of the stuff that they did in that show. Because, I mean, some of it's really good, but I think large swaths of it, at least from what I've seen, are kind of boring, and I wonder if he feels that way. I wonder if he looks at somebody like Paul Bentley, that's a car, looks at Paul Bettany
that's
and is
him
like...
in the Cars universe.
I wonder if he looks at him and he's like, well, I got paid longer, but compared to him, I kind of got the short end of the stick. I didn't expect this to be anything.
Yeah.
And neither did he, but he's like this beloved character. Coulson got his own show for 7 years. Nobody remembers Coulson apart from people that are fans of that show.
Yeah.
He became an obscure character with a TV show. In a way, do you agree? Because like... It's been years since I've heard anybody really talk about Coulson outside of that TV show. Like, he was kind of a fan favorite for a second in the movies, but past Avengers, I don't think people really talk about him anymore.
Yeah, the first season's kind of about him, but then it starts going off. And I haven't watched all of it, so maybe it comes back. But yeah, it starts.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Blue Dragon 5. He says Bentley was considering leaving the business after a conversation with his agent before the Vision offer.
Don't you hear? I feel like you hear stories like that all the time. Are agents just constantly trying to get their people to quit? Like you always hear these stories about like right before I got my big break, my agent was telling me I should quit, and I'm like, what?
Are you just trying to clean the slate because there's somebody else you want to represent? Like, what is happening?
That should be the lesson for agents. You never know when your person's going to get huge and you're going to make a ton of royalties. So just like keep going with all of your clients. She looks the worst, right? Are you with me?
Oh yeah. No, I wanted to complain about that.
She's too humanoid. Like Ma's face looks good because it's like an alien looking face, but she just looks like a human with horns.
Yeah,
and she looks really.
I know there are folks that hate it when I complain about this, but it bothers me. It takes me out. I have to. It is the same. It is the Steppenwolf situation, yeah. And I have to say I have it to a slight degree with Thanos, and I go back and forth on that, and we'll talk about it because I'm in the very minority when it comes to Thanos. I think there are places where he looks way too uncanny valley, and I find myself wondering if somehow we could have gotten away with doing him also just with prosthetics. At the end of the day, I don't know that we could have, but I kind of wish it had somehow been tried. With her, there's no excuse. It is straight up the Steppenwolf thing where it's like, why? And with Steppenwolf, it's I guess the same thing as with Thanos, where it's like he's supposed to be bigger than everyone else, but like you can create that illusion in different ways, and especially when you have close-ups on his face, when there's nothing else around to give you a sense of proportions or to give you a relative sense of size. Why on earth does it have to all be done in a computer? So you're right. With somebody like Ma, I don't have the Uncanny Valley thing as much because CG is how you do that. It's the same thing with the Hulk. Like, you couldn't really create that any other way. And like, can I tell that it's animated to some degree? Yeah, I can, but it's easier to suspend my disbelief because it would be like if Vision was always in CG. Like, we do that with prosthetics, with enhanced CG probably, but like, you can tell his face is there. Like, I don't know why we didn't do that with whatever her name is, because I don't even remember.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the other way. Like, I'm fine if you want to make her fully digital, but I would rather her look less human so it's less jarring, because it's like, oh, you look like a rubber face.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That human.
I'm pretty sure that's a comic character, and that's essentially her design. So like,
okay.
It doesn't really make sense to go, well, let's make her look more alien, so it makes sense to make her CG. If you're trying to make her look like a character that exists already,
yeah,
then you do whatever makes sense to make it that way.
And I'm coming at this completely blind. I haven't read the comic. I don't even know anything about the Black Order except for this movie.
I believe the Black Order came from the event with all the hammers. Am I right about that? It's been a while. Maybe it predates that, but I thought it was from that. What is that called? I'm rusty. It'll come to me in a little bit. Somebody in the comments will mention it, but.
Oh, here we go. Yeah,
which all I say she's mocap. Yes, of course she's mocap, but like, if your face looks that human, there's really no reason not to just do it in prosthetics because it would look better.
Yeah. I know she only gets like 30 seconds, but this little actress is really good.
She's really good.
Like that her eye, like she's got more intense eyes than I think I do.
Yeah, the sense of tragedy is fantastic.
It's amazing that these kids can do this.
Yeah, Blue Dragon 5, I'm sorry, I just don't agree with you. I don't think it's too nitpicky because it takes me out of the movie, and because like so much of the CG is really well integrated, that stuff is even more blatant to me when it isn't. I just think if you can make it look more realistic, then you ought to, because it's not even a matter of money at that point. It would have actually been cheaper to do it with prosthetics. I don't know why they didn't do that. I don't know. I don't think that's nitpicky. That it's a thing that bugs me. I was a little weirded out by this scene in the theater because it has not been customary to just interrupt the narrative in these movies with a flashback, and that was kind of out of nowhere, and it felt like they had a really hard time deciding where to put the scene.
Yeah, she's just thinking about it.
But then I think there's no good reason not to set that up, right? Like, they should have just bookended that with her sitting in that ship instead of dropping us in there, because...
Oh, they did it? I didn't even
No,
know.
they don't. They just
went
drop us
straight
in it. It's a... I think, it's a consistency issue with... the way you're organizing scenes, I think. Structure, excuse me. So the Russos, whenever they like to introduce you to a new place or a new time, they, in big giant letters, put it on the screen and tell you what it is. You know, space! Or whatever. But there, it seemed like they were just kind of trying to shock us with a big scary Thanos scene and illustrating what he does and what he's all about. He's gonna go kill half of a population. Okay, but I'm a little taken out because in the moment I think that it's like actually happening within the narrative. Like we just jumped somewhere else. It's like, oh, okay, that's Gamora, and like I figure it out, but I don't know. It's just I'm kind of a stickler for consistency when it comes to structure. I'm not sure why we did that, and it feels like almost a mistake. Like they just couldn't figure out where to put that scene. But then the fact that we cut to her, because the reason we're looking at that is she's thinking about it, puts it in the scene, so it's not just a random flashback. So yeah, I don't know why we didn't bookend it.
Yeah, I just assumed. I wasn't paying attention. I was looking at the chat, but yeah, I assumed that we just had her sitting there for a minute. Maybe they tried it and it just felt awkward. I don't know. Yeah, this is the beginning of the theme that keeps getting repeated in this movie, where people have to choose to sacrifice the one they love most. See, this is too far for me.
No, I think it is too, and I think it's funny for a second, but it stretches on way too long.
And I'll say this, because you said this is just staying consistent with Guardians 2, which we both didn't like him in Guardians 2.
Yeah.
Me more so than you, I think, but I say it's even problematic in this story because the big reason I had with Guardians 2 is that his whole thing in Guardians 1 was to get back at Thanos for killing his family. Here, we're seeing Thanos kill families. We're seeing what he did to his family. It's all right here in our face, who this character is or was for most of his life, and now he's just like eating chips and thinking you can't see him if he doesn't move. What?
No, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too much in that, because he's actually going to make the same mistake that Star-Lord does later, where he's so worked up emotionally. He's so worked up emotionally about Thanos and his thirst for revenge that he's going to run off half-cocked against Thanos, just like Quill is going to do later after he finds out that Gamora dies, which is the whole reason that they can't get the gauntlet off of Thanos, when they should have just cut his arm off. But he's still that, like, now I'm kind of dumb character instead of just not understanding literal language. See, I'm with you. Like, as soon as they know they're dealing with Thanos, he should probably start to revert back a little bit more to what he was in that first movie. Like, I praised Guardians 2. I praised that part of it to some degree, where, like, I like that he has more joy in his life, but he doesn't need to be dumb.
Yeah, they're very different things.
Because he took out the guy who was directly responsible, but even at the end of that movie, he's like, I still have to get Thanos. You know, you get to 2, and it's almost like there is no Thanos. It's like, it's like the movies forgot about Thanos. And then here we have Thanos, but he's still acting like that. So yeah, no, that's weird. I don't mean to be hypocritical. I think it's fine that he has more joy in life because he got half his revenge. Like I think that makes some degree of sense.
Yeah. But you're right. As soon as they, like, yeah, it's not till he sees him. I feel like, yeah, as soon as Thor mentions Thanos, he should be angry and getting ready for this fight.
We could, and again, some of it is we don't have enough time to really deal with these characters' motivations, right? And so that makes it really easy in a scene to accidentally just oscillate between modes without really understanding how we got there, or without actually doing the legwork to get there. You could have had a whole thing, a whole kind of mini arc with Drax where maybe he sort of in a way forgot about Thanos. Just a little bit, you know, to a degree. And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Like I've basically been living in a wonderland ever since we killed I just said his name earlier, the villain from Guardians 1, but
Ronan.
Ronan. But Thanos felt so far away, I just wasn't, I let myself not think about him.
Yeah, but this is, and to speak on what you were talking about earlier with inconsistencies with power sets and stuff, or like how in the world does Thanos should have no idea that they're even coming? How does he get here and like wait and then set up this whole illusion for them?
That's a great question. Yeah. And I don't think it has anything to do with the powers of the stones he has already.
No, I think the only one that would be able to do that would be the Mind Stone. He doesn't even, I mean, is that the blue one? No, that's the Space Stone. He doesn't even have the Mind Stone. That's Vision. So like,
well, no, that's Vision. That's at the end. That's the yellow one.
Yeah. And what's even worse is there's a later scene where he's talking to Doctor Strange, and then Doctor Strange is like, all of us, or like we or something, and he's like, all of you? And then he turns around like he has no idea that there's even more of them hiding around him. So he has no sense of like, he can't sense.
So he doesn't have a cosmic awareness, even after getting more of the stones.
No idea why he's waiting here for them to show up when he has no idea that they're coming.
Yeah, there's a lot of time and place questions like that. And the other big thing with Thanos is with relation to you just getting the stones is of course the why now question. We're trying to cover our basis with that at the beginning, where I guess the inciting incident is supposed to be the destruction of Asgard, where it's like he knows that they have a stone, and he goes to the last remaining ship, and he gets the stone there, and that's where he starts his quest. But I always thought it was a misstep to do Thanos' quest in this movie, because it felt like that's what we were doing in the background of all the other movies, right? Like, it seemed like the whole point was that he was going around finding the stones, and as far as we understood it, he already had access to and control of some of them, and was giving certain people, for whatever reason, the powers of those stones to do his bidding for them instead of doing that stuff himself. So, like, he gave, I thought, Loki a stone, but now we're acting like, or was the idea just, he knows where a couple of them are? I thought for a while maybe the idea was he had to know where they all were before he decided to collect them all, because he didn't want people to be coming after him, so to try to stop him. So it would be easier if he knew where they all were, and then he could just make a real quick road trip and grab them all, right? But he starts doing this before he knows where they all are, so it's even more confusing.
Well, he knows where they all are except for the Soul Stone, but he knows that Gamora knows where it is. So Is that what it is? He's planning on using her to find that one. That's why he needs her, but that doesn't mean he knows that she's going to show up here randomly.
But then why not start with that one? Because you're letting a bunch of people know that you're after the stones before you go to her.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe he felt like he needed a couple before he went for the Soul Stone. I don't know, because he has no idea where it is, so he shouldn't have any preconceived notions about how hard it's going to be to get.
Kellen O'Rourke, I want to talk about all of the ways he's using his powers in this scene here in a second, but where is it? I wanted to comment on something. Kellen O'Rourke, that fake Infinity Gauntlet joke in Ragnarok was so lazy, especially immediately before this, because
why would they let them do that?
The question is, was there an Infinity Gauntlet that was used before, and Thanos just had the guy who creates them make it again? But I'm pretty sure that can't be the case, because we're told that nobody's ever held more than one at one time, that it's a big deal that Thanos even had two.
Yeah, Peter Dinklage specifically is charged to make that for him. Recently, we assume.
So as far as the Jim Starlin, let me say this real quick. As far as the Jim Starlin weirdness from Infinity Gauntlet goes, this is the best scene for that stuff. And we get a cool thing with Doctor Strange making multiples of himself later. That also reminds me of that. But as far as specifically using the gauntlet to do really creative but twisted stuff, this is the scene that I wanted more of the movie to be. And it's, I think, unfortunate that Thanos starts repeating himself so often. He likes to turn stuff into bubbles. He does that a lot, and it'd be cool if it was other things, but, the first time it's bubbles, it's cool, but he just keeps doing that. I don't know what Thanos' deal with bubbles is, but the thing where he transforms Drax and Mantis is right out of that book. The creepy like accordion thing and the blocks. You got like the eyes like freaking out on the blocks. Like that is all over Infinity Gauntlet, and all of that imagery really hit me when I was a kid, and it was very exciting to see that in this movie. I just needed more of it, and it reads like they had a quota for that, where it was like, we're going to do one token scene because we're afraid that we're going to lose general audiences if too much of that kind of thing is in this movie. And so it ends up watching a little too watered down in the comic craziness department, in the cosmic craziness department for me, because we don't go there enough. And it kind of hurts. It kind of hurts it because it's so early in the movie that when there's not very much more of it through the rest of it, I found myself very disappointed.
Yeah, also, I have so much to say about that. The first one.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I will say, as someone who hadn't read the comics, that like freaked me out in the theater. I was like, "Whoa, what in the world?"
It's great
because that was pretty shocking. I will stick up for the bubbles because he makes it bubbles when Star-Lord's about to shoot her, and she's trying to sacrifice herself so he doesn't get her, and then he brings it back later when she tries to stab herself to keep him from getting the stone, and he does it again.
Point.
That's like that's his personal relationship with Gamora kind of thing there. But I will say in that last scene before we get to this one, because obviously something else is going on now. This movie's so hard to do a commentary on because like crazy new things keep happening while we're trying to talk. But that's how they downplay the Reality Stone. We keep talking about how they have too much. He's too powerful, and they're trying to keep like downplaying stuff. What the Reality Stone is in this is it makes illusions.
It's just an illusion.
That's all it
thing.
does.
Yeah.
It doesn't like actually change reality. It just like because they all turn back right when he leaves. So that's how they kind of take that stone off the table, is it doesn't actually do anything permanently.
Yeah, so the way the comic gets around it, because I understand the I don't fully agree with it, though. I understand the argument of you can't really get around like fighting Thanos and having him as a character in this if he's all powerful without dropping the power levels and making him not as powerful as he ultimately ought to be. The way we get around that in Gauntlet is we're thinking a lot more about what each stone does, and he really is more powerful each time you get one, and he's easier to fight, and then as he's getting them, he gets harder and harder to deal with. Thanos already is really powerful in that as well, but like it's not like he looks at a person and they disintegrate like it ought to be in this, but we're not doing that. In an Infinity Gauntlet, the whole disintegrating people thing happens like earlier than halfway through the book. Like it's one of the earlier things that happens. And I walked into this, by the way, calling that. I was pretty sure this movie would end with that plot point. And the whole idea was that, yeah, you can't fight him. Like, that was the point. But the problem is, these movies have to have big, giant fight scenes with their villains. So we can't do that. Like, it would be a lot talkier of a movie if we didn't do that. And a lot of the action would have been with characters that we didn't have yet.
Yeah, it would just
until we
been
got
the
here.
Black Order. Yeah, it would have been hard probably to sell this movie to the studios if it was just like them fighting the Black Order the whole movie, and then Thanos just shows up at the very end.
Well, I don't even mean that. I mean, like, the characters that could fight Thanos would have to be so much more powerful than the Avengers that they wouldn't be in much of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you'd have to introduce somebody like Captain Marvel earlier and let her fight him because she actually might be able to sort of fight him.
So, yeah, we talked over it earlier, but the scene that introduces Cap and his team is incredible. I was freaking out in the theater. Obviously, that's the first place they used, besides the opening credits, that's the first place they use the Avengers theme when he shows up behind the train. And I just love how, like, a well-oiled machine they are, because they've been on the run for years. They've been hardened. There's such a good team together. And then there's a huge name drop.
Yeah, a part of me, Wakanda, a part of me almost wanted the like Winter Soldier theme, or the not the Winter Soldier theme, but the Captain America First Avenger theme to play when he walks out there instead of the Avengers theme. But it's so well integrated into the orchestration, and then it turns into the full blown Avengers theme that I can't say I don't like it. And I'm okay with that theme also sort of belonging to Captain America too, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I'm First Avenger is one of my favorites, so that would have really got me. That would have been like X2 for you if that theme had played.
Yeah.
But the Russos, I think that's the only piece they used in Winter Soldier, was that little bit of that theme, because they didn't want to use too much stuff from First Avenger.
It was surreal, and I think I said this when we did Black Panther. It was surreal seeing this movie just a couple weeks or like a month after Black Panther, because that movie was still in the theater. So all these characters that you were just introduced to, and that music sting and Wakanda and everything, are coming back right here. And I've always said that the Avengers movies for a lot of characters are like this person 1.5 or whatever, where you're getting like a part of a sequel to a character. And so you get Black Panther 1.5 a month after Black Panther. It was crazy.
I don't think that's ever happened. Like, that's got to be a first, right? Like, to get that surprise so soon after you just had that movie. And it was a big risk. Like, they talk about how, I heard them talk, the Russos talk about how it was a big risk to set this final fight in Wakanda.
Yeah.
Because we just had a Wakanda fight a month ago. It's like, we just had a third act in Wakanda. We're going to do it again. But they lucked out because that movie was so universally popular.
Yeah, and like, what if that movie performed just okay? Or what if it wasn't really... I mean, I don't know that it has to be a cultural phenomenon, but that certainly helped. Like, this movie watches like it was, in a way, not in a bad way, but like made retroactively after the popularity of that movie was known, but it wasn't. Like, the weight, or not the weight, but the kind of, I don't know, again, gravitas of the Wakanda stuff plays like this is a big deal, and we know that you're all going to be excited about this. And yeah, you're right. And now it helps that they knew how he was kind of a standout in Civil War.
Yeah.
So they probably expected that movie to be accepted.
Yeah, they accepted, but they had no idea how crazy huge it was going to be. I hate that, by the way, because Peter says something that's actually really good. It's a good line, and then he like says, that doesn't really make any sense. But you know what I mean? Like, no, it made perfect sense, and it was a great line. And Tony, you swayed Tony with it. I don't know why they did that afterwards. Where he says, "I can't be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood." That makes perfect sense. I don't know what you mean. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I forgot all about that. Yeah, the line he has after that's weird. No, you're absolutely right about that. The scream Doctor Strange has in just cutting back to him is almost unintentionally funny because you're just not expecting it. It's like, ah! It's sort of like Xavier in the '90s X-Men show. Just whenever he does that scream, ah!
Got needles in my face.
Like, oh god. I just really like the timing of that. Okay, we talked about this when we did Homecoming. I'm one of the 5 people in the universe that really liked this suit when we saw it by itself, not on Peter Parker. And then when he finally puts it on, yep, I'm with everybody. I don't like it. No, that's hilarious. Ebony Maw looks like Palpatine.
In Rise of Skywalker specifically, old dying Palpatine. It looks like he's been in formaldehyde for.
Or does Rise of Skywalker Palpatine look like Ebony Maw?
Yeah, Ren Davis agrees with me. He does think they're trying to be too humorous. Yeah, I don't know why you need to be humorous there. That was a great line. I don't know why they're trying to downplay it.
Yep, there is too much of that kind of undercutting comedy. I think Endgame does it even more, and it's just a balance issue that we haven't gotten there yet.
Balance. How does killing half of everyone mean balance?
I know. I don't know. We'll talk about it. But yeah, his motivation's supposed to be all about balance. The movie has a difficult time balancing some of its
that's a great
stuff.
Meta. It's meta. Its mistakes are even meta.
But I'm gonna say I said some of the tonal stuff. It's really just the comedy, right? Because I think the feels of all of these different movies coming together and like interrupting each other and then becoming a cohesive piece is one of the strongest things about this movie. Again, just as an entertainment. I love that. One of the things that this and Endgame together really get right is the believable way that each of these that each of these Earthlings respond to going to space. I love it. That scene in Endgame where that bit, I forget who it is, where it's like, raise your hand if this is, was it Rocket? Raise your hand if this is your first time in space. I love that. It's one of my favorite things in these movies. And I like seeing Peter Parker, freaking out about being in space and not really even knowing what to do with that. And like they're not missing the boat on how weird it is that he's going to space this early in his career. Like, that's a thing. It's treated like a big deal. And I really like that. It's also interesting in contrast to see Tony Stark having come to terms with it. Because remember, he had a psychological breakdown about this in Iron Man 3. And he's now in space, going to be in space for a while. Isn't that a fun irony? That he's going to live in space for a good long time.
Oh, yeah. It's so sad. And he just talked about that with Strange.
After he couldn't deal with the fact that these things even existed.
Yeah, he goes up into space for a second at the end of the first Avengers, and he sees all this craziness, and he's had, anxiety about it ever since, and now he's having to face it head on. And he's kind of the main reason. That's the main reason he comes up here. Like, he chased him.
And that's part of why that's part of why I'm having a hard time not calling him the MVP, because I have been waiting for that vision he has to pay off for a long time, and I really like the way it pays off. They didn't forget about it, and it's handled extremely well. That idea of, I'm gonna see, I'm in space, and I see all my friends die, and there's nothing I can do about it, and I have to face my own mortality. And he has to do that kind of twice. Here and then in Endgame, and they make you think that perhaps he'll actually get killed off at the end of this, which is I think it's almost showing their hand too much, because I love that scene, it's handled really well, but I was positive that means then he dies in Endgame, because that's, you have almost like, and not in a bad way, I usually hate prophecies, but it's kind of a fulfillment of a prophecy. And he's gotta die. And then the idea that the only one instance where they succeed that Doctor Strange sees is his epic sacrifice, which is entirely a payoff of that whole thing. Yeah, of course that's where they went. But it's satisfying. It's just pretty clear that's where it had to go.
Yeah, the way they weave that from Avengers to Iron Man 3 to Age of Ultron to here is just masterful.
It's masterful. And then you fit all that in with the heart motif, and then you get to the end of Endgame, and you see the proof Tony Stark has a heart thing again, and it's like we never forgot about that motif. It's spectacular. Now I'm getting really ahead of myself.
Yeah, and I've still only seen Endgame once on this recording, so I'm not going to be as fluent in talking about that with you yet.
Those are different things. Yeah, I'm not going to be fluent. I love this idea that even though Gamora was raised by Thanos and has spent more time with him than obviously any of our main characters, knows more about him. Doesn't understand him and what's in his heart. The problem is, I ultimately don't really understand him either.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate. It's kind of like, because he's kind of just a crazy person, but the performance and the visual effects are so good that they make you love this character.
And it's confusing because the movie kind of clearly doesn't know he's just a crazy person. He's supposed to be sympathetic. It's working overtime to make you go, he's kind of got a point. And at the end of the day, I get that he thinks he has a point, but he seems like a crazed lunatic who's just not thinking of all the possible ways he could be getting what he wants and making the world a better place. And furthermore, it's hard to even understand how much of it is about really making the world a better place, or just feeling a certain way. I still say,
got a Messiah complex.
Yeah, but is it a Messiah complex that turned him into a psychopath that loves sadism? Or is the sadism thing a holdover from in earlier vision of Thanos from these movies that Whedon had that the Russos decided not to run with, but because they had the sadism thing, they were stuck with it? That's one of the things I'm most confused about, is why is this guy a sadist?
Yeah, some places, like in the beginning where they said let him have his fun, when he's messing with Gamora in the Nowhere, and he's just like torturing her, and then right here when he's torturing his other daughter,
like does he enjoy this stuff or doesn't he? And if he does, is he a guy that at one time was altruistic in his way, but believed in the very ultimate ideal of ends justifies the means and doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, and that actually corrupted him? Like, is it a power corrupts thing, but he's still, like, is the idea that his motivation has remained the same, but it's twisted now? I mean, you could argue it was twisted in the first place, but it's twisted to the point of non-recognition even from him, where he's just doing, in a way, it's like he's doing the bidding of an earlier version of himself that he thinks he still is, but he's this complete perversion of that guy. I don't know, and I don't think the movie does either.
Well, either way, whether it does or not, it doesn't do enough to convey it to us. But it could go either way, like, because psychopaths, that's what they do. They believe their own delusions after a while. But it could go, he could have been a psychopath already, because he says, like, I told him my idea, and they thought I was a madman. Because you were.
Yeah,
but,
the Mad Titan, yeah.
So he could have been mad first already, and then he just got stuck on his plan. Or he could have been, like you said, altruistic and had this plan, and it just drove him crazy trying to do it for years and years and years.
If that's the case, though, it shouldn't be so easy for people to look at Thanos and go, he kind of had a point, and to do the whole, like, you know, wearing a Thanos was right t-shirt thing.
I mean, I can't blame the movie for that. I don't know what those people are talking about. That's the internet for you.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a minute.
Yeah.
When he gives, so it's two backstories. He gives the backstory of his own planet, and then he gives and before that he gives the backstory of Gamora's planet, and he, like, it's so weird. The whole thing is just about overpopulation, which I'm not going to say isn't an issue in the world. I wouldn't call it like a big, like the sort of hot button issue this movie seems to be sort of treating it as.
There's no way it can be a hot button issue on every planet in the universe at the same time.
Precisely. Yeah, not to mention that he's... Okay, let me say this real quick then. Because I wanted to make this point somewhere in here. He's discounting places where losing too much of the population would probably mean you don't survive.
Yeah, he's killing lots of planets by doing this. There's some that aren't going to recover from this.
But, like, what if your planet was recently devastated and there was, like, a Holocaust or something, right? What if there was a genocide already? And because he's basically an absolutist, and he's saying that like this one solution will solve the problem for the entire universe. He treats the galaxy or the universe as if it's all one planet. And what if you had a genocide and you only had like 2,000 people left of an entire race, and you got rid of 1,000 of them? Well, that planet's not going to bounce back as well as a lot of these other planets. That's going to create new problems before it solves old ones. What about Asgard? He's going to get rid of half of the Asgardians after most of them are dead.
Well, he got rid of all of the Asgardians because he blew up that ship that they were all on.
Yeah, but he didn't though, because we're going to see them later.
Oh, we see them?
Yeah, I said last ship. It must not have been the last ship. Well, remember New Asgard in Endgame. Like, there's a group of them that are still around that are going to go to Earth and make another Asgard, and there seems to be at least a few hundred, if not a couple thousand of them.
Oh yeah, that's the whole thing where Valkyrie like escaped with some of them.
But and then when you get to the end of the movie, he for the third time says, "I don't want to be king, and you can have the kingship."
But that's like, but it's weird that they made her have to escape for them to be alive, because Thanos shouldn't have killed all of them. He should have killed half of them.
Yeah.
He's so inconsistent.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Well, maybe he's like the Borg, where he goes after civilizations before he goes after, like, individuals or ships. But that ship happened to have a lot of their population on it, and I thought it was most of the, if not all of their population. I don't know what's going on with that. But what I was going to say is, so, Devil's Advocate, in the logic of the movie, let's forget realisticness and just look at like the logic of the film. Oh, by the way, I like the payoff of the eye. I love that that's the eye from the last movie, or from the last Guardians movie, where he was like, he won't know where his eye, and apparently he took that eye. I'm pretty sure that's the same
no
guy.
way that could have been planned either. That's crazy.
Yeah, if it's the same eye. I'm pretty sure it is. I could be wrong, but anyway, it's super fun if it is. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm jumping all over the place, but I just remembered this too, and I gotta mention it. Scenes and scenes ago, the knife that Gamora stabs Thanos with is the same one that he was getting her to balance in the flashback. I never noticed that before.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's cool. It's just, it feels real rushed, where it's like we have to get that flashback now because we want it to inform this scene that's just about to happen. Would have been really nice if that... Retroactively, obviously, it's easy to say this in hindsight. Wouldn't it have been nice if somehow that scene could have been in Guardians 2? To then inform this later. Like, that would have been great.
Yeah.
I think. But anyway, so we get the background with Gamora's planet and how it is thriving now because of what Thanos did to them. That he killed half the population. They were dying. The planet was in trouble. And when he got rid of half the population, it fixed the problem. And so whether you buy that or not, or whether you buy it that it would work on a galactic scale, ultimately the movie seems to kind of be saying that he maybe has more than a point. Like, it seems to be less he's just a crazy person that thinks he's helping more people than he is, and more, yes, but at what cost? Which is where the people that would wear the Thanos is right t-shirts would get off. They must be buying into what the movie, I think, is telling us, which is, yes, he's right, this would fix things, but it's incorrect to do because of all the people you would kill. Not that it's incorrect to do because it wouldn't work.
Okay, interesting.
You see what I'm saying? Like, what the movie wants to tell us does kind of matter.
I think it could also be that that's more of explanation of his motivation, because he was proven right, so in his mind it will work everywhere, even though it won't. But he just because he happened to be proven right that one time, and he was already deranged in thinking, and so caught up, and he has to do this thing, and then it works. He's like, "Oh, see, I was right," and he thinks it'll work for everywhere else.
Yeah. Somebody earlier said the Endgame seems to confirm that he was just a crazy person. I would argue that Endgame decides in almost like a light switch moment that he turns it into a crazy person, or that he, just like runs with his baser instincts because the one plan doesn't work, and that kind of sets him into more of a, I don't know.
It's like he only had that one thing, and then he's like, "Whoa, what do I do now?"
I don't know. He's just not fleshed out enough. Like, he's kind of an idea before he is a character, and it's a, I think, really flawed idea because it's so easy to poke holes in the solution, if not the motivation, right? Because again, on a singular planet scale, I could kind of see it. Like, there's a TOS episode about this. Thanos is just Kodos the Executioner, from a TOS episode. DJ, there's a, it's not a flashback, but we meet that guy again. What is it? Conscience of the King, I think. Where we find out that Kirk, when he was a kid, lived on a colony where exactly this happened. Where this guy Kodos comes in, he kills half the population, and Kirk survives it. And it's like, it's the same thing, but when you put it on like a galactic scale, it doesn't work. But the other thing is that he didn't do it with an Infinity Gauntlet, because if you have the Infinity Gauntlet that is supposed to be all powerful, he could have done a lot of other things to solve that problem. And I know a lot of other people have brought this point up, but I can't get away from it. It seems to be the case. Like, again, have a cake and eat it too. You got to dumb down what the powers can do so that you can even have a movie to some degree. But then you got to talk about it. You got to tell me what the rules are. You got to tell me what the limitations of the gauntlet are then. And then it's weird that they have so many limitations when Titan. It's weird that they have so many limitations when it was the Big Bang that created them. Like, they're like cornerstones and building blocks of the universe. But here's all these things they can't do. You know? Like, the idea that the Reality Stone doesn't really warp reality or change reality is kind of nuts. Like,
well, in this movie, I think it actually does in Dark World, but he just doesn't do it in this movie.
But I would think that you could, like, how far does it extend? Because to get what he wants done, I would think all you need is the Reality Stone. What Thanos in the Infinity Gauntlet wants is the end of all things. He worships death and the personification of death, and he thinks that what she wants is everything to die, which is not true. Death is the one who's all about balance. And the reason that she wants Thanos to kill people for her is because there are now more people alive than have ever died. And that is the cosmic imbalance. It's not about fairness. It's about a cosmic imbalance. It's about the number of souls there are and how many are alive and how many of them are dead. It's more this cosmic idea. And she charges Thanos with destroying half of the universe so that is not true anymore. And that's like an initial story point. It's not the be-all, end-all. It's not the whole thing. And he worships the end. And he can't get the end without all of the gems. That is what you would need to end the universe. You would only need one, or maybe a couple, to do what she wants.
Yeah. Sorry, I started laughing because that was actually really funny, where he says, what master do I serve? What am I supposed to say? Jesus?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I'm sorry. We haven't been talking enough about these scenes, but I wanted to get the whole Thanos motivation thing out of the way.
I don't want this to spin into the Thanos, because we easily could talk about that for the whole 2 hours, but I'm sure we'll come back to it later. But we didn't talk about this at all, the giant Peter Dinklage of it all. And
yeah, which is such a great casting choice, and he's fantastic in this. Peter Dinklage has now been two great characters in comic movies, and he's one of my favorite things about Days of Future Past. He really makes that movie work. And I like that both movies, in very clever ways, deal thoughtfully with his diminutive size. In this movie, we've made him a giant, and so it's just kind of fun and ironic that he's this very short guy that's playing this massive, like one of the biggest people we've seen in this universe. And we do more of a thematic thing with it with Days of Future Past that I may be reading into too much because it's not really discussed, but it always seemed to inherently be there. Which is the thing I talk about the rewind, and I don't need to go into it again here, but it's cool that both movies kind of play with that in different ways.
Well, and I love that he's just a dwarf. Like, this is just what these dwarfs look like. There's a bunch of them. I mean, they're all wiped out now, but there was a whole race of these giant Peter Dinklage people.
I like her in the background, just acting like she's on a trampoline.
Oh yeah, when they got there. And this is. Yeah, and I just feel so bad for Tony in this scene because I'm like, yep, I feel just like you watching these movies, Tony, having to put up with Drax acting like a doofus.
Yeah.
His face, the disdain on his face right now.
This scene and the one previous is classic Marvel. Of course, you've got to have these teams that don't fit together in any way at all face off because they think they're enemies. That is handled way better than it is in Avengers, where I thought the initial "we've all got to fight before we can be friends" thing was handled in a lot more of a contrived way. And here, I don't mind the idea that the folks from Earth think that the aliens must be working for Thanos. That's viable.
Yeah, it makes sense that way, but the other way is a little weird. Like, why do you think Doctor Strange works for Thanos, Peter Quill? He's a man.
Well, there are lots of people in space who look human or look very humanoid. So the fact that he has powers would be enough. No, I'm gonna go that far. Anybody with powers, Quill would think is an alien because the last time he was on Earth, we didn't have superheroes.
That's true.
I like the effect of Strange freaking out
when he's looking at the future. And millions of futures.
That's pretty great. We'll talk about this when we get to the end game, but the whole end game idea, while I love the dramatic way it's set up, ultimately reads really convoluted and doesn't quite pan out by the end, I don't think.
Oh, is that true, Stephen Murphy?
What's that?
I assume he's talking about Mantis. I don't know. he says she's actually a really good martial artist and she doesn't really get to use those abilities at all in these movies.
Oh, that's really ironic because she's the last person in these movies that you would think would be an actual superhero.
I don't know if he's talking about Mantis, but he was responding to someone else.
Maybe he's talking about Gamora. I don't know. But if he was talking about Mantis, that would be really funny. Vormir, because Mantis, because a lot of people laughed at that scene in Endgame where all the ladies get together in fighting stances, because people were like, what is Mantis gonna do?
That's true. She's gonna
so it's really funny if she's a martial artist in real life, because there you're just like, well, she seems like the most inept person. It's like I know you don't know Star Trek, but it's like because she's an empath. It's like if you put Deanna Troi in a superhero suit, like what's she gonna do?
Oh, this was the other big, huge thing in the theater for me. This wasn't obviously as big of a crowd thing as the Captain America thing, but this is a big thing for us nerds who've been watching ever since First Avenger.
In preparation for this, I was watching this with my kids recently, and Jason did not remember First Avenger that well, and he got excited when Red Skull showed up, but he forgot what his name was, so he just looks at me and in all seriousness goes, "Hey, look, it's Red Face!"
Red face. What makes the red face red?
And this actor does a really good job of doing a seamless transition where it's easy to not think about the other actor.
Yeah. He does a perfect impression there, and then here it's not as perfect, but he's kind of going his own way with it here. But for that reveal, I feel like he probably felt like he needed to do it.
That's totally fair. Hey, should we knock out some of these super chats real quick?
Yeah, we got a super chat from Komodo Dragon Boys. Oh man, I'm gonna save that one. That's actually about the Thanos thing, which we will definitely get to.
Okay, don't forget. Yeah,
I won't. I have it written down. But Lewis,
I went off on a tangent, and I apologize. Go ahead.
He just asked us what Marvel heroes should get a game. I would love Daredevil, Thor, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, and others. That's true. We just talked about Daredevil in the last Captain Logan show. We both agree we definitely need a Daredevil game. But I guess let's talk about a
really cool detective game with Jessica Jones. I've never thought of that before, but a real kind of talkie-based RPG thing could be really cool with her.
Yeah,
never thought of that.
But as far as characters in this movie, Doctor Strange would be fascinating. To get a really weird, crazy, basically the Mysterio level of all Spider-Man games, but the whole game.
I'm going to go out in left field, and I'm going to say, and I guess this is probably just because this is the scene we're looking at, but I just had a flash of a possible, I don't know if anybody would buy this, Gamora the game, because we keep doing Guardians things, and they're always comedic, right? And you could do like a really serious kind of no nonsense cosmic Marvel game with like if you think about it, you could do a really cool God of War thing with her, like a really good like hack and slash planet hopping game with Gamora as your main character. And maybe it could be like a Gamora and Drax thing, but it would be cool if it was like Guardians characters where it's not about the comedy, where you actually do the epicness of cosmic Marvel.
And use comic Drax, so they're both green. It's got two green characters running around.
Right. Yeah. And then Hulk shows up in the middle, of course.
They go to Planet Hulk and they find him, and you can play as Planet Hulk. That'd be really fun, actually.
Steve Murphy, I wish it was Hugo Weaving, but oh well, I'm glad they paid it off. He wasn't going to do it. He said shortly after First Avenger that that one was enough for him, and he didn't seem to really like doing that movie that much. And I always thought he came off a little bit condescending about superhero movies, and comic book movies, which is weird because the Matrix trilogy, especially the last two, were basically comic book movies.
Yeah, that's weird.
He was I don't want to keep doing this kind of thing. And I'm like, your career has been this kind of thing. The stuff you're known for is this kind of thing.
Yeah, I wonder if what he meant was these kind of like studio, like, you don't really get much creative input, and you just kind of get thrown in there and just it's all part of the wheel type movies. I wonder if that's what he meant more of. I don't know.
Well, again, the Matrix sequels definitely fall in that category, and I would think the Lord of the Rings movies probably do to some degree, but maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Lewis Cox, Mistress of Death.
That's a cool idea. Sorry, Mutali. How about a Thanos game where you wipe out planets? He goes, Cap would like that. I would like that. I would
when
love
you
that.
beat it-
And then the sequel could be Thanos wiping out, or Thanos could be Galactus wiping out planets.
that's what I was gonna
I just
say.
want planet wiping games. That's what I want. The planet wiping trilogy. Who would be the last one? I don't know. Kang? Maybe probably not Kang.
So there's where we bring back the bubbles because she was trying to sacrifice
And it's
herself.
that same knife. So it's all about their relationship and the beginnings of it. No, you're right. You've won me over on the bubbles. Now, if he does it again, I might cry foul.
I think it's just those 2 times. I think it just exaggerated in your mind because it was so weird.
Yep. Nope. I'm with you. I will retract that criticism. This is heartbreaking. We talked over her performance, but oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah, and it's crazy that
Oh.
the performance is so good. The CGI is so good. Everything's done so well that even though we're not on board with this character, this still gets us, you know? It's crazy. And like the whole thing, she's got like so much hope because she thinks that he doesn't love anybody, he doesn't care about anybody. So this means that they've won because he can't succeed in his plan, and she doesn't even realize that she's the one. Ugh. Gets you in the feels, as you like to say, Cap.
It does, man. Whereas I don't like to say, yeah. No, I love this scene. It's so good. And again, I'm still kind of confused about Thanos, but in the moment, I don't care. There seems to be a complexity to that relationship that I'm really buying, even though I'm not quite getting it. The actors are selling it, certainly.
Well, I buy their relationship more so than his motivations. Like, and then I'm gonna say real quick.
Well, I guess what I
Star-Lord
mean is I don't fully know how she feels about him. Like, it's clearly a real conflicted kind of thing from her perspective, because she says, like, you don't care about anything, you don't love anything, but is the idea that, like, in the back of her mind, she could never quite tell if he actually loved her or not, especially given the special treatment she gives her over her sister and all of that. Like, there's a real conflicted thing there that I don't fully understand.
I think it's, and admittedly, I think this is informed by things outside the movie maybe, but I'm not sure. I think it's more of an abusive relationship thing where she hates that she cares about him.
Yeah, maybe so.
And that's why she hasn't been able to leave all these years. And because that's not in the movie. Is that on the movie? There's a deleted scene that I watched. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. She comes out and says, he asked her why he says that you didn't think you left on your own. He let her leave. Like, they explain that, how she was able to get away. And then she says, I never left because you made me think that I wasn't worth loving. I wasn't worth anything, but then I finally found people that made me believe that I was worth more than that, and that's why I left. And that's not in the movie. That's
not in the movie.
It's an alternate version of the throne room scene.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I don't know if I ever watched that, but I remember you or somebody telling me about it.
But yeah, it's like an abusive relationship where he's not just physically, but he's emotionally abusing these girls, putting them against each other, and like manipulating her like he did on Nowhere. And that's why she's so messed up in her head, because it's been since she was like 7. Like, she's really messed up.
And again, I say, how much of a sadist is he? Like, is he doing that to Nebula just because he thinks it's necessary, and in the back of his mind he actually feels bad about that? Or because it doesn't seem like that. It seems like he cares about Gamora and does not care what happens to Nebula, and that she's constantly looking for his approval and can't get it. Because if he secretly feels bad about Nebula and goes and cries in a bathroom every time he tortures her, her arc doesn't really work as well.
Yeah, it's weird, and it's hard to know why he cares so much about Gamora and doesn't. We never really get why he doesn't.
And that's why I say I don't fully understand that whole relationship.
Yeah, that's more of like, with him and Nebula, I don't understand why he hates her so much. Like, you could have got rid of her anytime. I don't know.
I like the way Shuri is utilized. I want to know when we finally get back to this character somewhere, if after the 5 years she comes back and attempts to reconstitute Vision. Like, is WandaVision, and I'm just speculating here, is WandaVision gonna be like Wanda recreating the universe in her own image, and she's like made up a new Vision, and then at the end of that we kind of reset back to the regular world and status quo, and then he gets brought back? Or is he dead after that?
Yeah, it might be like a Groot thing where she can make another Vision, but it won't be the exact same.
Yeah.
because she seems to be like, with the technology that she has, how much more advanced they are. She seems like she's ahead of Tony and Bruce.
Kellen says,
like
don't
she could
forget
do anything.
Thanos did physically and mentally abuse Gamora too. Yeah, definitely, but he clearly had feelings about it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. When I was talking about the abusive relationship, I was mostly talking about Gamora.
Yeah. I think he was probably talking to me, thinking that I had forgotten about that. No, that's a really good point that you raise. And there is also kind of that it's just all a bunch of questions with Thanos. There's too many questions. But there is kind of that question with Thanos.
Did we need a Thanos movie? A prequel Thanos movie?
Yeah,
like
we did. Well, especially because the Russos talk about this movie like Thanos is the protagonist of the piece, and they said that before it came out, and they doubled down on it. They still talk about it like that, and it just doesn't watch that way. He is the background villain. Yeah, we cut to him, and he's by himself sometimes, but not all that much more than any other big, scary villain in a piece. Like, does he get any more screen time, and do we get any more in his head than we do like Bane or Joker? Like, in the Nolan movies, like, not really, right? Like,
yeah, I think it's just because people find him sympathetic that they think.
But they said that before the movie came out, and it seems like some of, and this is nothing against anybody. Like, if you actually find Thanos sympathetic and you buy into his motivations and rhetoric and everything, like, I feel like I can poke holes in that, but I get why in the theater you would have been, kind of won over by that. But, like, I think there were at least some people who, keeping up with the production of this, heard the Russos say that and walked into the movie expecting a Thanos character piece and left deciding that's what it was. And I'm telling you, I don't think that's what it is.
Well, yeah, it's also that he does get an arc, but villains get arcs, obviously. Like, we obviously just had his opportunity to change and he refused to.
Yes. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, Blue Dragon 5, I like get this man a shield. There's lines like that I wish I was DJ, like I probably would have enjoyed more had they not been trailer fodder.
Yeah, I didn't see any trailers for this. It was awesome.
So Peter Dinklage is about to get what I think is the funniest line in the entire movie. And this is, obviously, like we always say, comedy is subjective, and some people might see this as that MCU humor that kind of undercuts things and doesn't work. But I think it's really funny.
So you like I've heard you say this many times, and it's something I hear other people complain about. You like all the Thor stuff, and I hear most people complain that it's completely useless because the whole point of that, besides obviously his character arc, the whole point of it, like plot-wise, is to throw you off, or is to subvert your expectations. The whole thing, you assume, because he's going and spending the whole movie, or spending so much time on it, that he's getting this weapon, that's how it's going to end, and then it subverts your expectations where he misses.
He's going to beat it. That he's going to beat Thanos with that. Yeah.
And then we have the big.
That will be the MacGuffin he needs to beat Thanos, and he just doesn't think to cut his head off with it.
Yeah, which is great, and it's huge, it's shocking, it like crushes you. The ending is super sad. But on repeat viewings, and a lot of people realize this, like that, it seems pointless because you know that it's not going to happen, it's not going to go anywhere. So that whole side quest thing, I've heard people complain about it, but I just wanted to talk about it because we haven't talked about it yet.
Oh, interesting. I don't know. I feel like I can very often, I don't know, it's case by case thing. I think very often I can watch a movie with kind of two brains where it's like, yes, I know where this is going, but I remember how I felt about it while I was watching it, and I probably wouldn't appreciate it as much, again, if it weren't for Ragnarok, because it's not about the story stuff as much as it is, for me, Thor feeling like Thor again. And it's a lot more just the way he's being portrayed than it is about what he's doing. I think is the reason that I dig that stuff. And, like, it's not even my favorite stuff in the movie. It's just, I like Thor again, and that was exciting.
Yeah.
And he got things to do, because he gets left out of the Avengers movies pretty heavily.
What are you talking about? He got to go take a bath in Age of Ultron.
He sure did. That's what he did in that movie.
No, yeah, I'm with you. I don't like it as much, just because I'm so checked out on that character after Ragnarok. And because it doesn't go anywhere with Endgame, like it does go somewhere. Obviously, Endgame is all about what happens at the end of this movie, but it's just so goofy and silly. Like if they had continued this Thor into Endgame and he's like just completely, distraught and like a drunken mess, like I would have liked that so much. But because he's like calling people noobs on Fortnite and walking around and
Yeah, no, the choice of the arc overall is good. I don't know if I love once again he doesn't want to be king, but
oh
beyond that, yeah, it's a lot more about the attitude and the way it's written than it is about the actual choices made in the character arc.
yeah.
Wanderer Cap, would you like Fat Thor if Thor Ragnarok had a Thor story like this? Well, no, because it would have suddenly turned into Ragnarok before in a world where you just didn't have Ragnarok. It almost would have been worse because it would have come out of nowhere. You're like, why are we playing this for comedy as hard as we are? And for the type of comedy it is, where I'm just supposed to be laughing because it's that actor in a fat suit. It felt like we took a thing that came from a tragedy and a pathos and just made a big joke out of it, as opposed to there's some levity, like you get in the real world out of a horrible situation. That's the difference.
Yeah, I don't, and we'll talk about this obviously when we get there, but I don't understand where that came from because they were, like we said, there's some balance problems here with humor, but it's not that bad. I don't know how the Russos, they must have just thought it was hilarious to let it get that.
DJ,
that
I
far.
hate to do this to you, but I'm going to need you to run point for about 3 minutes.
Sure thing.
And I'll be right back.
Absolutely. I will talk about this Wakanda. Hey, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
All right, you actually muted me before you left, so I couldn't talk to them.
I
So
muted you?
They were all shouting at me.
Oh no, I'm sorry guys. I don't even know how does that work?
It's okay. It was only a couple seconds, but we were just talking about I was trying to talk to them about the Wakanda action scene, where Cap and I don't know if you remember this, but this is one of my first videos on the channel.
There's no reason that should have happened. That makes no sense.
Oh.
Yeah, like I muted myself with my microphone, but like I just did it again. When I mute myself, it doesn't mute you.
It shouldn't have done that. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes it just. Sorry guys, it doesn't make any sense though.
Yeah, I was just like talking away, but they let me know pretty quick, so I didn't waste anything.
Are you sure you didn't mute yourself somehow? Because there's no way I could have done it from my end. I mean, there is a way, but I didn't do that. Like, anyway.
Yeah, I didn't touch anything.
Oh, I think I missed my favorite line. When he goes,
oh, no.
"That's what killing you means." I think that's so good.
But yeah, it was just the beginning of the Wakanda action scene with all the doppelgangers.
I feel bad about that. People are mad at me in the comments, but I don't even know how it happened. Like it physically does not make sense that happened.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know. I was just talking about how the Cap and Blue Dragon 5 brought it up too, with the scene where Cap and Black Panther take off running and they're like running, they're super running like ahead of everybody. I freaked out in the theater at that. So here's Groot's little mini arc.
Yeah, and I guess it's an arc just in the sense that, like, before this, being the rebellious teenager kid, like, he doesn't really care about anything that's happening and just wants to play his video game, and all of a sudden he's realizing the stakes and he makes his own little sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Rudisos we're talking about, it's just like, with this movie, you can't do, obviously, a real fleshed out arc with everybody. Or even
I thought it was so creative to use that to create that prop.
To use Groot's arm?
Yeah, to create Stormbreaker. That was so cool. Just the way we integrate everybody in really like unusual and creative ways is awesome in this. And of course, a lot of my favorite moments in this movie are a couple of characters that you throw together and you don't waste the opportunity. You don't waste the moment. Two really unlikely characters that you don't expect to put together, that all of a sudden you go, oh, well, of course they put those characters together. There's some of those in Endgame too. One of the best, of course, we'll get here in a second with Rocket and Bucky.
Rocky and Bowen.
when he wants it when he wants his arm. That's great. Although I will say, when you get to Endgame, there's that great thing with Rhodey and Gamora where they put this unlikely pair together and thematically connect them. Oh yeah, no, I hate that.
Make it stop.
And I hate that for lots of reasons. First of all, it doesn't look very good.
Oh, it looks horrendous.
When Banner's, at the top of the Hulkbuster, and it should be fun that because he can't turn into Hulk, he's in the Hulkbuster, which we saw him as Hulk have to fight a few movies ago. Like, that's cool.
No, I hate that. I mean, just let him be Hulk. You're not. It's like, why? What is the whole point? It's like,
I like that if there's a better reason that he's not the Hulk. Like,
yeah.
Isn't your problem with it that it doesn't feel like it's for a good enough reason, and we don't, or rather, we just don't really deal with it. We never fully understand Hulk's whole business of I refuse to come out. Like, if you. What if you did the thing we do sometimes in the comics where we separated them, and the Hulk was somewhere else, and Banner was alone, and there was no Hulk, and he couldn't come out, and the only thing he could do to help in the fight was to get in the Hulkbuster? Then it's cool, right? Like, there's a way that you could do that.
Yeah, but it's mostly just him, like, bumbling around and tripping and falling, and which is true. He wouldn't know how to use that thing. He had no, like, Tony had to train to use that thing, like the whole first Iron Man movie, so he wouldn't know how to use that. But I don't want to see him tripping and falling and acting like a goofball. That's no fun to watch. And because the Hulk thing doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't amount to anything, it's just like, well, why couldn't you just let him be Hulk in this scene, like he was in the trailers?
So this is another one of those kind of infamous, I don't know if this scene is infamous, but MCU is kind of infamous for these, like, green screen scenes where the character in the foreground doesn't really look like he's in the place where the background is, and I think this is one of those.
Here's that scene where he says, like, he has no idea that the other people are just, like, hiding behind rocks, like right now, like Scooby-Doo, because Doctor Strange will say something that announces that there's more of them.
See, in the theater, I'm sorry, what are you saying?
I was just going to say, there's how you know he's delusional, that he thinks the universe is going to be grateful for this.
Yeah.
See, he says our, and then he's, oh, there's more people here.
A lot of it's just attitude and tone of the piece, where, like, it feels like, and I don't mean to read too much into this, I don't think I am, it feels like it's the movie saying that he's on to something, but it's his choice of apparatus that's wrong, more than anything. It's just hard for me not to immediately go to, why is Thanos so uncreative? That's the thing that drives me crazy. This is the point of this Thanos, seems to be he's just lacking in imagination, and that's where I go, I'm sorry guys, but I'm a Thanos fan. That is not Thanos. Like, if you create a brand new character named Thanos that is as interesting or more so than the one in the comics, I can get behind it to some degree, even if I kind of don't love that you changed one of my favorite characters. Like I've said this a million times. That has been done in things where I'm running with it because it ultimately was really good. I don't totally get where they're going with this Thanos, and I don't get why he doesn't try other stuff. And one of the biggest issues for me, again, we just don't talk about the rules and how stuff works. The biggest problem with his modus operandi is, why does he just assume that the gauntlet can do these things but not these things? You see what I'm saying? It's like, I know when I get all these stones together, I can wipe away half the universe, and that is the top upper echelon of the powers of what this thing can do. How do you know that? And he's right about it. And the fact that he's right about it is part of where I get off when I say the movie seems to not to be not siding with Thanos, but thinking that he's right about things that he doesn't seem to be right about.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, and I hate so much that we just like arbitrarily make weird rules. Like, he says it. The idea is all he has to do is think this thing, and it's like the snap of a finger. He doesn't actually have to snap his fingers. But in this movie, he actually has to, like, that somehow makes the stones do something, is the action of him snapping his fingers and closing it. Like, he can't use the stones without closing it. Like, there's all these weird things. I don't know if it's part of the gauntlets technology or what, but like,
I just wanted to be more consistent about that. Eric's complained about that too. I don't have as big of a problem with that. It's the cutesiness of the way the snap is used that bugs me, because he's not snapping for other things through the movie. It's almost like you said, it's almost like because that's the most powerful thing, somehow that's the snap. You have all these characters that seem to understand how the gauntlet works, but nobody's ever had a gauntlet before.
2 characters try the snap. Like, it's
no, it's not just that. It's the fact that at the beginning of the movie, or toward the beginning of the movie, Gamora says all he would have to do is snap his fingers, and he only does it the one time. She's right. That's the thing he has to do. How does she know that? Now, maybe she didn't know that, and maybe she was just guessing. She happened to be right, but it's dumb.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, when she says it, it's like an expression. Like, he could do this with a snap of his fingers. Like, that's how easy it is. Like, but then they actually make it a rule that he has to snap his fingers, is what makes it weird.
Yeah.
But and I do want to talk about this. Solar Dragon brought this up, and I had this in my notes. I definitely wanted to talk about this. Is why is nobody talking about the fact that this is the most temporary solution I've ever seen?
I know that
it's gonna do nothing. Like, I actually did research for this, and the movie doesn't need to talk about this. This is just like science stuff. We're at 7 billion right now. We were at 3.5 billion, which is half, in the 70s.
Yeah.
He bought us 50 years. Way to go, Thanos.
Good job. Yeah. And then, and I was gonna make that point too, but I was gonna save it for Endgame because it's more relevant there. But that's fine. And then he destroys the gauntlet like the problem is solved forevermore.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And again, if you can just go, yeah, but he's a crazy person, then it's too easy and he's not that interesting. And then I don't understand people who go, well, see, Thanos, this is one of the coolest things that happens in this movie. And again, this is the big, crazy comic stuff I want done with the gauntlet. He looks up and sees a moon and he goes, okay, I mean, it's awesome. More of this, please.
Doesn't Tony say, like, if you throw one more moon at me or something later?
That's great. That's what you want from this.
The effect where he, like, pulled it out of the gravitational pull was awesome. It was like,
oh, good. It's unbelievable. What was I saying? I was
the temporary solution thing, how he destroys the stones.
Yeah, I remember talking about that.
Stupid moon.
that stupid moon.
I love this. Get some! He's just flinging him around.
Oh, I know what I was gonna say. Yeah, you're basically you're basically just saying you have to go to the cop out of, well, he's crazy, he doesn't make sense, and then. So why is it then so interesting that he's sympathetic unless I understand the psychology and the history that got him there, right? Like, he could be a really interesting lunatic if I knew what the less lunatic version of him looked like, but I don't have a real good sense of what that was. I Am Steve Rogers is great. But also, you have a lot of people who say, and again, let me reiterate. I'm not saying it's bad because it's not what I wanted. It's not even full-on bad. There's things I like about it. It's just they reinvented what I think is a great villain, and didn't fully win me over on it. The Black Order has, by the way, a whole bunch of big wheels, which I think is hysterical. This is Spider-Man big wheels, but I do have to make this point. You had a lot of people who said, well, he had to be sympathetic. They had to do what they did because his love affair with Death in the comics is stupid and uninteresting. To which I respond, sorry, I just don't agree. It's not. It is interesting. And you can have a character who is full-on evil and it still come from a place. He's not a boring one-dimensional character who's just bad for the sake of bad. Like, there's an interesting character there in Thanos in the comics. And just because you kind of plug in for the formula of guy who thinks he's doing the right thing, but it's actually horrifying, doesn't automatically make it good or make it work. Somebody earlier, maybe an hour ago, asked why I thought they went this way with Thanos, and I think it was maybe just Rousseau's sensibilities. I think they're not cosmic guys. They're not, they start with Winter Soldier. Like, they're more about the down-to-earth stuff. And because that movie was so great and so popular, they kind of gave them the keys to the kingdom, and they've just got them working with material that's not their forte. And so I'm sure they're thinking, you know, we want another bad guy like the guy in the suit that we had in Civil War in Winter Soldier, where he's doing the wrong things for what he thinks are the right reasons. But that's not appropriate for Thanos unless you can win me over on it and make me buy it, and they just didn't. That's all. It's the legwork was not fully done. They could have got me there. They just didn't. Hawkflame. Oh, that's great. He says, people are hung up on the idea that you have to make a villain sympathetic to make them interesting. Joker says hi. Precisely. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people that said that about Thanos, I may be wrong about this, but some of the people who said that about Thanos probably like the Joker, and are also probably people who don't want the Joker to have a backstory. Yeah, we're being redundant, but the Banner stuff is just not interesting, and he's a different character now, and yeah.
Yeah. And that's supposed to be his... I mean, I understand it. I'm not an idiot. I understand that's supposed to be his arc. Like, he doesn't have the Hulk to get him out of all of his problems like he always does. So he's supposed to do things on his own, but, like, that's not... It's just not interesting to me. Like, he does fight this one Black Order guy, but...
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not... Anybody could have done that. Thor could have dropped down and did that.
Mutali says, how would comic Thanos work in this movie, though? Well, it would be a different movie, and I don't want to sit here and attempt to rewrite the movie for the rest of the commentary. I mean, it would have had to be a different thing. I just think, like, the foundation of the motivation in the first place seems flawed to me, but I also think it could have been fleshed out and maybe made to work. I don't know exactly how you do that, like... But I resisted it in the first place and needed to be won over on it because what we initially set up with Thanos was pretty clearly something more akin to comic Thanos. We had a reference to death. Like, we clearly were thinking that direction. And then we didn't do that. And it's hard for me not to think the Russos, or maybe the studio, were against going too far in comic mythology to have a straight-up personification of death. But I think you could have maybe even rolled those characters into one. I don't think you had to take, like, you know, the first act plot point from Infinity Gauntlet and make it the motivation of the whole piece. A guy who worships death and what's the end of all things, and has some kind of an actual, you know, interesting reason for that could have worked. But yes, it would be a different movie, absolutely.
Yeah. But like you said, you didn't even necessarily want this to be like a fetch quest MacGuffin finding movie the whole time either, so
No.
that would have freed up a lot of time. But yeah, we don't want to rewrite the whole movie right now. That'll be for let's do it again.
And it's
10
easy
years
to
from
say
now.
Infinity Gauntlet is just not adaptable, especially in this universe. But like, I wouldn't expect a straight-on adaptation of it. We didn't get that with Civil War either, and it's great. Like,
Yeah. Do we see? Let me know, commenters. Do we see when Doctor Strange hides the time stone? Because
this is the stuff I wanted in the Doctor Strange movie.
He has the time stone in the beginning, and he tries to use it against Ma, but Ma like ties him up real quick. So he has it in there at some point. I don't know if we actually see on screen when he hides it, or if he just does it off screen.
I don't remember. I don't think we do. Because I think it's supposed to be a reveal to the audience that it's gone.
Yeah. A fake.
It's a fake! And Mutale, I like the fight with Thanos and Doctor Strange as well, because he is, at the moment, about the only person I really buy being able to go up against Thanos without having to take his teeth away too much. And of course, like we were talking about earlier, when he's fighting people hand to hand, there's a whole lot of, well, how come you just use this stone? And, you know, why not? Why use the reality stone, make everybody think they're looking at something they're not looking at? Like, he's not even as good at the reality warping thing as Loki.
He only ever uses the Power Stone, and or he only ever uses one at a time.
Yeah. And again, maybe that's how it works. Until you get all six, I don't know. But we're not told. Also, I'll say, if we did make this more of a character piece for Thanos and it was more from his perspective, which, by the way, I was all for. When the Russos acted like that's what it was going to be, I was excited. Like, oh, our cast of like 50-plus superheroes is going to be sort of in the background, and it's going to be Thanos' movie, and they're going to be his antagonist, but like the heroes of the story, but his antagonist. And also, that would have been really cool because in a superhero movie, the villains are always supposed to lose. And from his perspective, he's the hero. So at the end of the movie, the villains lose. But for us, it's the heroes that lose. Yeah. Like, that would have been spectacular. And if you had it from Thanos' perspective, you could have gotten all the rules a lot easier. All that exposition would have been really easy to work in. Oh, here's how it works. The fact that we don't have those rules is kind of all the cannon fodder I need to say, no, you're wrong, Russos. It's not Thanos' movie. It's not from his perspective. Because if it was, we'd have that stuff. And I guess it's cool in a way that it ends up being Tony that does the snap at the end of the second movie, because he kind of goes up against Thanos twice, and the second time it works out. Like, he gets, sort of a do-over.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just watching
Tony
sure. die. I'm not talking like I should be. But so this is what happened. Like, Strange stops him because he knows... That's the whole thing, right? Is that he knows that Tony is in the one future that they win, so he has to make sure he doesn't die, so he has to do whatever he takes to keep him alive.
Yes. But what I don't get is, and we'll get to it with Endgame. I mean, I will have to repeat myself a little bit, but that is gonna read real convoluted, because I need to know what the one difference was. In the other millions of futures, did Tony die in all of them? And this is, and so it would have been in Doctor Strange's character to let him die instead of give Thanos the stone. So he dies in all of the, like, there's no other eventuality where Stephen Strange goes, no, I'm not going to trade lives? Like, are we basically saying that Doctor Strange never has the Vision thing where he does trade lives and always? Maybe that is the idea. I don't know. Because it's hard for me not to look at it and be like, well, there's also only one future where there's, like, a rat that turns on a machine that, like... But maybe that is what it is. I mean, the more I'm talking about it, maybe that is the idea, and that is that in all those other futures, Doctor Strange would not have given Thanos the stone. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe it isn't that convoluted. Maybe that does work. I don't know.
TH1 says, you're telling me that Doctor Strange can defeat a god like Dormammu, but not a man like Thanos? Come on, give me a break. TH1 gives us a super chat to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the idea was he didn't want to use the time stone at all to risk it being out so that Thanos could get it from him. So he just didn't use it.
Yeah, but he could have used it when Thanos wasn't around, because like it deals with freaking time. Like, does he have to be in the same room with him to do something with it that would help them? I don't know. Chaos there in the comments. That's a name I don't recognize. Welcome. I feel like the whole taking the villain side kind of makes them lose what makes them scary, in my opinion. Yeah, but there's a couple of really freaky deaky, like Thanos miniseries, particularly the one that Jason Aaron wrote. Thanos is always scarier to me when I get in his head in the comics. Like, when you get his morality or lack thereof and you gotta spend time with him, it makes you feel icky. Like, it could have been great. But it also might have been not enough of a family movie. You know, I mean, there are ways in which this movie is really playing things safe, which I think hurts Thanos. It hurts that character.
That's a really cool, the way everyone like shudders when he walks in. And they haven't even seen him, so they don't even know what he can do. I think one of my favorite scenes in this whole movie is when Cap is holding back Thanos, and Thanos like gives him this look like, what in the world? Aren't you just a dude? Like, how are you doing this? Such a cool scene. Cap is the best. Cap doesn't like get anything to do really in this movie. He just fights things, but he's awesome. He's always awesome. I'm glad he got more in Endgame.
Me too. I'm kind of okay with him being somewhat in the background in this movie, just because he's really out of his element, and B, after the stuff with Civil War, he could have been too in the forefront to almost like. It might have, especially because it's the Russos making this, and of course, you know, they made 2 Captain America movies. They actually made a Captain America movie and an Avengers movie, but it had Captain America in the title. That could have come off the way they might have handled it, like they were trying too hard to make him look more sympathetic after what happens in that movie, after the mistake he makes with Tony Stark at the end of that. I think less is more with him right after Civil War. I like that he doesn't get any big speeches in this movie. I don't think it wouldn't have been the appropriate time.
I think it's really key that he and Tony never meet in this movie, because that would have brought everything to a halt, because they would have had to deal with stuff.
And isn't it more interesting when they have to kind of, you know, put the water under the bridge, so to speak, when they finally do get together?
Well, that's a really dramatic scene, and they do have time to handle it there, because
that's great.
Nothing's happening at that moment in Endgame. But now, like, they're in the middle of a war, they would have.
Well, and this may have been the only kind of thing that would have brought them together. Like, that's a phone call Tony wasn't even comfortable making.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Banner had to make it. Ugh, this is gruesome. The fact that she has to make the decision to kill him, and it's not even a snap decision, because it's not quick. She has to keep doing this and watch him die for like 30 seconds. And then he comes back and he kills him anyway, and it doesn't even work.
Is that right, Kellen O'Rourke? I'm glad we didn't do it that way. He says, originally Cap wasn't even supposed to appear until this moment. I've never heard that.
Yeah, they said they kept trying to hold off his reappearance. They wanted it to be a big moment, but they ended up moving it more towards the beginning.
I like it toward the beginning with Vision and Wanda, because it reminds us of the big ideological argument with Civil War, and we need a transition from that to the big cosmic thing. I think we have to have that.
Ugh. This is so hard.
Daniel Davis, there's some great tension building in the sequence. Oh, it's masterful. I would have gone a step further were it me. I just had this thought. I would have dropped all the sound effects out of the sequence.
Maybe music too.
No. I would have just had the music, because the sound effects are really minimal and they're practically dropped out. And I would have gone all the way. I would have just not had. I would have basically had no sound and let the music totally drown us out, because it nearly does it anyway, and it's really effective. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything. This is a really minor point, but I might have gone all the way with it, or at least seen what it sounded like.
Yeah, it's very minimal. I'm sure they probably tried a couple different things. Maybe his stone breaking just didn't look good when it didn't have a cracking sound.
Blue Dragon 5, I feel so bad for Wanda. She had to see Vision die twice, once by her hand. Yeah, that's a good point. Stephen Murphy, you actually wouldn't realize Vision was talking without subtitles. Exactly. Sometimes that can be really effective where, like, all that matters is the visuals, where we know that there's probably a wall of sound that everyone is hearing, but the idea is it almost would put us in the heads of those characters because they're not even hearing it. That's not what matters right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this scene's so good.
Yeah, I always forget that time gets reversed there.
Oh yeah. The way that he like rips a chunk out of his head. Oh, that's so gross. Ugh.
And it's great that that's so visceral because he's a machine.
And then he just turns all monochrome.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's so cool.
Now, what does the Mind Stone do? Does it make him smart? Maybe we can forgive it if he suddenly gets smart here and starts getting creative.
He gets creative finally. I just think that's such a weird backwards way to go with Thanos. And again, like, you can make anything work. It's counterintuitive though. That you're gonna go, the point of this Thanos is that he has no imagination. He has this one idea, and that's different than like an obsession with one thing, right? Like, that's different than I just didn't come up with any other ways to deal with this. Obviously, it's been like 20 minutes, half an hour. We talked over the scene where they tried to take his gauntlet off and they didn't manage it, and they should have cut his hand off. We talked about that earlier, so I don't think it's a big deal. We didn't talk through that scene. Was that when I left?
No, that was a little bit after. We were just talking about other things.
God, I really am sorry that happened.
Because that was when we were talking about the moon. That was that.
I finally figured out what caused it. And all I had to do was stay on this screen, and that wouldn't have happened. It was because I jumped to another scene, and I didn't have the audio settings set up for it, and I didn't realize it. Anyway, I feel bad.
It was only like you were super quick. It was like 45 seconds.
It was a couple minutes. Maybe. Yeah, but people were mad, and I understand that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say I said my most insightful things in that minute, and I'm sorry, you'll never hear.
Do you need to repeat any of it? Was there anything that you said that you need to say?
No, I realized that I wasn't on audio when they started talking to me, so I didn't say much. Baby Gamora.
Mutale, how come Vision doesn't have mind powers? That's a good question. It seems like they're really vague about what the Mind Stone is, like DJ was alluding to, and it seems like it literally gives him his mind, or so. Like, it's weird. It's almost like the Mind Stone gives Vision a soul, but it's not the Soul Stone. Because there is a Soul Stone, and it does a different thing.
I guess Vision doesn't have a soul. He's just artificial intelligence. He's just a mind.
He does very little with any of the other stones. Like, it kind of doesn't matter what they do, except for maybe the individual movies where they do particular things outside of the gauntlet.
He uses the Space Stone a lot because he teleports everywhere, and he uses the Power Stone a lot because it's just a power beam thing.
So when you get to Endgame, tell me if I'm wrong about this, because I might be. That scene where he goes to Little Gamora, it seems like in the Mind Stone or the Soul Stone is kind of pointless, because I thought the idea was that she was still alive but in the Soul Stone, or like her soul was in the Soul Stone, and that's what we were gonna use to bring her back later. But instead, we did a Gamora from an earlier time period, and the Russos. I feel like I read an interview where they even talked about how she's actually still around, but in the Mind Stone. I was like, oh, okay, well, I see where this is going. And then we didn't do it that way, so I'm a little confused about that, and if there was a point to it.
I thought that was just a fan theory, but I don't know why him doing the snap sends him to that, like, Vision place.
I don't know what's going on there. But because of stuff like Black Panther, I have to assume that that's not just in his head, that's, like, actually real and happening. Right?
I don't know, because Thor was, like, yelling at him, and he, like, came back to it. He's like, what'd you do? And then he, like, wakes up. So.
Well, especially if it's just sort of like a waking dream, they really shouldn't have kept that in. Like, I don't know. It's weird. So what was your... Because everybody talks about how blown away they were by this scene. Like, what was your experience in the theater with this? Did you have feelings, or did you immediately jump to, Well, yeah, okay, this is dramatic and all, but like, there's another movie. They're all gonna come back.
No, like we've talked about before, I'm usually pretty good at suspending my intelligence. I don't know, suspending my awareness.
Just say you're good at turning your brain off. Is that what you said? You pretty much said that.
No, I'm good at suspending my awareness of obvious things and getting inside the movie with the characters and kind of living with that. And so, yeah, it was pretty emotional for me. I did have some obnoxious people in the theater, which I wish weren't there. They were annoyingly talking the whole movie. And, like, when this happened, they were like, so Black Panther's dead now? He's just gone? And they're like, shush. I'm having an emotional
And also,
moment.
like, don't you know how series work? It's, that kind of thing drives me nuts. Like, I don't mean to be a prude about it. I get that not everybody spends as much time on this stuff as I do, and not everybody like has to watch these things for like a job. But I get 9-year-olds having that. I don't understand adults that have ever watched a TV show, especially a genre show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's really emotional because I'm with the characters, and the characters it's hitting them hard, so it's hitting me hard. I never noticed till this viewing that like nobody acts in those scenes. I mean, yeah, they're acting, but like it's so low key.
Yeah.
Like, nobody freaks out. Nobody says anything. Everyone just stares.
Yeah, no,
it's so shocking that they're just like they have no response.
It's spectacularly effective in the moment and the way it's played. I love that it gets as much time and you know emotional weight as it does. I was numb in the theater to some degree. I think there were maybe like certain characters that I felt more for than others just because of the way it was being acted on screen. But I felt like compartmentalized DJ like emotionally, because I was expecting this the whole movie. Like I brought too much to this. I mean, I know Gauntlet, and they didn't use a lot of like major plot points from Gauntlet, and so right before we get to this, I mean, the whole movie I was waiting for it, and then I was like, okay, I see where this is going. Like they're gonna take the first act plot point from Gauntlet, and they're gonna make it the big ending for this movie, and that was a little disappointing to me just as a Gauntlet fan initially, and so like that made it hard to be as, you know, weepy-eyed as other people were. But the other thing is I was distracted by what I felt like was kind of the silliness of it doesn't all happen at once.
Cheating, yeah.
It's just like different people disappearing at different times when we decide to put a camera on them. And I found that really distracting. And then like with Peter Parker, it's like, because he's a young kid that had his whole life ahead of him, and that's supposed to be the saddest, most tragic part, and because he was supposed to, you know, like be the protege of Tony Stark, but Tony Stark gets to live and he doesn't. He takes 8 times longer to die than anyone else. I found those things very distracting.
Yeah, it's that the first scene, it could be they all happen at the same time. We just have to show them sequentially because the movie, and we can't show everything at the same time. But then once you get to the Guardians scene and they all go one at a time, it's weird.
Rainbow Nightmare, that's a really good point. He says, and there's no music, no dramatic soundtrack, same as the Endgame cold open. Not to mention, that's a wonderful juxtaposition with the scene before that I was praising for having this this wonderfully dramatic music and taking a lot of the sound effects out, or playing them real quiet. And then I love the tragic score through the credits here. This feels like old Hollywood stuff to me. This is like the credits over like a 1940s epic.
Oh yeah, we don't have any animated title sequence for this. I never thought about that.
No, and you shouldn't. Doing this on black is how you have to do this.
Yeah, it's really cool. Somebody said...
Our heroes... you cannot have a triumphant ending. Our heroes lost.
Yeah, this is crazy. And this did hit me really hard in the theater. I didn't have the thing where I was thinking ahead and thinking about all the movies. I just was in this movie in the moment. And I also didn't know anything about Infinity War, so I didn't know anything about the half thing. So, like, that wasn't even in my mind. I don't know. But, I mean, obviously I knew he was talking about the whole movie, but I wasn't expecting that before we started talking about it. But this is cool. Matthew Patton says something really cool. If this is what they did, it's not what they did because the Guardians all go one at a time. But Matthew Patton says Spider-Man sensed his death with his spider sense. That could have been a cool way for the Peter thing at least to happen, but because Drax goes, then Quill goes, then everybody else goes. It's already doing that thing that you didn't like.
Interesting. That also could have played for accidental comedy. Like, oh, something's coming.
Yeah, like what did he think? I don't know. I guess he just sensed something. But yeah, and I hate the internet. That doesn't really need to be said. But I hate what the internet has done with that scene.
But it's the only way we could be doing this right now.
Well, I hate that they made it a meme, Peter Parker's death, and it's like so overused. The whole like, I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark, because it takes away from the scene when you rewatch it.
Well, and again, I feel super prudish saying this, but I just have to admit my feelings. Like, it was strange watching that become a cultural phenomenon, because it was kind of the thing I was worried they were going to do walking in, and I was kind of hoping they wouldn't.
Specifically the Peter Parker thing, or the whole
No,
ending?
specifically the snap being the cliffhanger.
Oh, okay.
Because that's sort of the thing that gets the ball rolling in Gauntlet. And
Yeah,
the idea that I would watch 2.5 hours of the big, crazy cosmic Marvel movie, and that's what they're building to, like, I like Starlin's cosmic stuff, and I was wanting them to kind of go, I don't want to say bigger, but just allow it to be weirder. People acted like that was a big mind freak, and I mean, I've known about that for 25, 30 years.
Yeah, I could see coming at it from a totally different perspective. It's hard not to be like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is that I can't not come with the knowledge I have. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no one can.
So like that's my own personal feelings on the subject. I'm not giving anybody crap for having feelings about that, and it makes sense that it became, the cultural phenomenon it did. And in a way, I guess it's cool that one of probably my favorite comic events and one of my favorite comic things has become this big giant cultural phenomenon. It's just not what it was. It's like you have all these Thanos fans that love this character that's, in my mind, not Thanos.
Yeah.
So it's bittersweet, you know what I mean? Because I don't feel like I can share it with them. It's not like, hey, you guys finally discovered this thing that has been, a big part of my life for, a couple of decades.
It's like trying to talk to people who like the Raimi Spider-Man.
Yeah, but Blue Dragon 5, I said that too, though, because he said even if you have the knowledge coming into it, the moment was conveyed effectively. I mean, I said that. It is really effectively done. Except for the part where it all happens separately, because I think that's unintentionally funny. But the way it's acted and shot, and having no music during that bit and all of that, like, yeah, it's handled. But I get why it hit people so hard in the culture the way it did, and I didn't mind that becoming a meme. Where like after that, you had all these parody things where we find amusing ways to make Thanos get rid of people we don't like. And I think that's hilarious.
Oh, I haven't really seen much of that, but we had that one that I didn't bring up yet. This is from Komodo Dragon Boys. Super chat: was imbalance of life and death resolved after TIG?
After what? Oh, Infinity Gauntlet? I guess not.
Cool.
The thing is, like, I love Gauntlet. The Thanos stuff is like a huge giant epic that spans a lot of years, and I've not read all of it. So beyond that, I don't know what else was done with Death and her trying to make that happen. But I think she just kind of decided that she made a big mistake with Thanos, and shouldn't have gone to him. The Thanos game? What are you talking about, Mutale? There is a Thanos game?
Who played the Thanos game? He was in a bunch of games for a little bit. He was in Marvel vs. Capcom and... Oh, where you see if you survive the snap. It must be
like that's right. Yeah, no, I forgot about that. Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, the welder did not survive.
I can't remember if I lived or not. It's been a while now.
I never did it. But no, I mean, any more Thanos thoughts? We're in the credits.
Mr. Green Beanie, that's also the thing, and you're right, yeah, it's just that's the thing that makes it bittersweet for me. That's also the thing with the MCU and comic book movies in general. They're not really made for comic book fans. They're more so for regular people who want to watch fun action movies. Yeah, that's true. And where it gets weird and sticky to me is when you're adapting stuff that I love, that I would love other people, especially people that in my life that I think would like those stories, to be able to consume them in some way, and I know they'll never read a comic book. So when you put it in the theater and it's like a watered down version, or it's based on that but it isn't really that, I get mixed in my feelings about it.
Yeah, like you said, they're made for people who will never get these stories if they're not in this format. Lewis Cox gives us a $5 super chat to say, I feel Mistress Death should have been in the Soul Stone and not Little Gamora.
Again, at the point that you're doing that, it gets potentially a little bit convoluted. Like, I guess, what would you be like by the end saying Thanos didn't come up with this himself, it was actually Death the whole time, which could read as sort of like, Bane and Talia or something? I don't know, like, it seems like the whole point of, and I could be wrong about this, but it feels like the whole reason the Russos went this way story-wise was to avoid doing Death at all. So I don't think there would be an eventuality with this version of Thanos where you would have had Death anywhere.
Yeah, it seems like that was the starting point.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you, Daniel Davis. He says comic books are a visual form. When it's adapted to film, there's going to be a lot of changes, and I say that as a huge comic book fan. But is that to say that the whole, Thanos who worships death thing couldn't have been done just because comics are a different kind of medium than film? Like, maybe not. I can see why you might have had reservations about doing Mistress Death. I still think it's possible. But again, I always come from the school of you can make anything work, you just have to make it work. And some things are more effective in certain mediums, certainly. But, like, even if you don't want to go that far, to have a Thanos who worships the idea of death, that's just inherent to his character. So I'm a broken record, but again, if you're going to make him about something entirely different, where instead of being about death, he's all about just the thing death charged him to do, you gotta win me over on it, and I just didn't buy it by the end of the day. So it's not about it. It's not just about it being different from the book. It's that it was going to have to work harder to make me excited about it, because I waited years and years to see Thanos on the big screen. You see what I'm saying? And so, like, yeah, I could have gone there, but then what they gave us didn't work. So it wasn't just changes. It was, if I had never read Infinity Gauntlet, I would have had most of the same problems I had with Thanos. It's just amplified by the fact that they also did that out of one of my favorite villains in comics. That's what I'm saying.
There's the Georgia logo. Filming this here in Atlanta.
Yeah, you have a whole different perspective on all this.
Yeah, that park where they're walking in the beginning, Tony and Pepper, is Piedmont Park. That's right downtown. Go there all the time. It's supposed to be New York. They just put a New York skyline in the background of it.
So, I will go on the record to say I always felt really funky about this after credit scene.
Well, it's another thing that you don't like, and it's not just weird. It actually saves the plot because she fades first, and he has time to push the button before he fades.
Oh, sure, yeah. There's all of that, but the bigger thing for me in the moment, before we get to the next movie that this is setting up, and before we get to Endgame, is I had all these people around me in the theater who were like, what the heck does that symbol mean? Like, nobody knew what that was that weren't reading comics.
That's true.
That's what's weird about it to me, is that the last image you leave everybody on is the Captain Marvel symbol when people don't know what that is yet. And I think that was a weird choice.
But I think that's what the after credits should be. Like, in the first after credit scene, all he says was, "We're putting a team together." So, and people didn't know what it was at that point. normal people, obviously, we knew what it meant.
Yeah, but in this day and age, it's different because immediately what everybody does that's in the know is they get obnoxious and they go on YouTube and they start uploading videos with like circles around things, going, what this after credits scene means, and it just kind of like separates the culture where it's like, oh, these people are in the know and they got to go look at me, I know this, and then everybody like. People felt left out with this. They were like, oh, I don't know what that means. Crap. Now all my comic fans are going to give me fan friends are going to complain that I don't know what that is. Like, that's what I don't like about that kind of thing.
I'm okay with it. I like it's an after credit scene. Like, it's not for everybody. I don't know. But in my theater, the guy who came in to sweep up the popcorn afterwards, literally when the lights came on, was like, that's the Captain Marvel symbol. She's gonna be in the next one.
That's really funny.
He shouted it like throughout the whole theater because everyone was like, huh?
There were a bunch of people who hilariously thought it was Wonder Woman because of course they did.
Well, that makes sense because they thought Thanos was Hellboy in the first Avengers.
And they thought Justice League was an Avengers movie.
Oh man, that was fun.
It was. That went by a lot faster than I expected it to. I'm sure there's all kinds of things we should have talked about that we didn't, because I don't know how to look at that movie and not get stuck on Thanos, which is why I waited so long before we brought it up. And then once we did, it's just I get into that mode, man. Like, because that's the thing that I don't like about this movie. A lot. I mean, most of it really works, but I love watching it.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about Thanos.
We didn't talk enough about Brolin. I love the performance. I love the look.
It's so good.
I don't totally understand why he doesn't have his helmet on. I don't care. It's not a problem. I just don't know why.
Well, there's because a scene. At least they had it. He had it in the beginning, but then once he got the Mind Stone from Loki, or the Space Stone from Loki, he like did this ceremonial thing where he took all of his armor off. Like, hey, now I got 2 stones. Now I don't need
Okay, because in interviews, the Russos acted like it had some... I don't know. They talked all that up like it was more meaningful than it ultimately ended up being in the final piece, and I would love to somehow read the first draft script, because they talked about it in interviews early on like there was a character reason for it, where it was like, he's not going to let himself wear the helmet again until he gets the whole gauntlet together or something, and there was like some kind of deep reason for it. For him personally. I get the sense that there's a script where it actually is much closer to a Thanos character study. I think a lot of the questions that I'm asking are probably answered somewhere that just didn't make it into the movie. I think Thanos is ultimately probably a massively compromised entity.
Well, yeah, and it's impossible for the directors to separate themselves from working on this movie for like 4 years and all the script revisions, so like everything's going to seem more impactful in their minds and bigger deals because they've lived with it for so long, and they're not necessarily just going off the finished product like we are. So when they talk about it in interviews, it's going to seem like they understand it a lot more than we do.
Mystical Green Beanie, I hate being a comic book reader watching comic book movies. I wind up being that obnoxious friend who's like, that wasn't as cool as the comics. I'm that wet blanket. And I'm with you. And again, in my defense, I've seen lots of comic movies where I like a version of a thing that is completely different that some other fans really hate just because it's different. Like, I'm fine with the way the Mandarin was handled in Iron Man 3. I think for that piece, it made sense, and it was interesting, and it was a cool reveal. But in this, again, I don't think if I had ever read anything with Thanos in it, I would have gone, well, this guy doesn't make any sense. And then it's made worse because they did it with a thing that did make sense, and I'm aware of what it was, and I'm seeing the things they could have done that they didn't do. So I don't know. That's the distinction for me.
Well, and this is kind of like the most, maybe I'm wrong, but because Civil War just uses the name, Civil War probably too, but this and Civil War are probably the most adaptations of a story. Usually we adapt characters, but we make up our own stories, and it's because this is tied so closely to that story. It's not that story, I understand, but it's very similar.
Yeah, it's a missed opportunity thing in
things.
exactly the way the Malekith thing was. If I'd never read Simonson, somebody earlier said, is it like Simonson for you? Yeah, it is. Because if I'd never read the Simonson stuff, I would have looked at Malekith and been like, well, that's a pointless throwaway villain that there's nothing to, he's one-dimensional. And and because I read Simonson, I went, well, that's a pointless one-dimensional, piece of wood that there's nothing to. And here's who he was in the comics, and he was so interesting. So of course that makes it worse.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad you still like the movie. Glad you enjoyed it with your kids.
No, I do, and I like Endgame more than a lot of my comic book friends that think that Infinity War is pretty good, but they really, really dropped the ball on that. And of course, we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, because I haven't seen it since the theater, and it was actually. I'll just say this, as someone who hates going to the theater, and when I do go to the theater, and I don't hate going to the theater. I hate seeing movies with other people. So like I try to go at like Saturday at like 9 in the morning or as early as I can, so there's as few people in the theater as possible. But I saw Endgame with a huge crowd, and it was like the best theater experience I've ever had. So even for me, like it was weird. I had. Everyone was quiet when they were supposed to be quiet. Everyone cheered when they were supposed to cheer. Everyone laughed when I felt like they should have laughed. They weren't laughing at like dumb things. It was just like the perfect theater experience for me.
There was a small percentage, I'm sure, of theaters that were that way. Because I certainly was not in one of those.
Because I said I didn't have a good theater experience with Infinity War. I had a really bad one. But I really lucked out with Endgame, and I kind of don't want to watch it again. I haven't said this. The Avengers movies don't last for me. The first Avengers movie, saw it in theater the first time, loved it, blew my mind, awesome. Saw it 2 more times in the theater, haven't seen it since. The second time, I liked it less. Third time, I was like, oh man, I gotta stop watching this movie because I'm liking it less every time I watch it. And same thing with Infinity War, like it blew my mind completely the first time I watched it, and the second time I watched it after talking with you and like thinking about it more, and then like this viewing, I mean, it's fine. I don't ever think I'm gonna like go back to it as like one of the ones I go back to, because I don't have time to go back to movies that much anymore. So the Avengers movie, they kind of, that's why, and I know that's gonna happen with Endgame. Like I know I'm not gonna like it as much as that first experience. But we'll see, because we got to do it on the show.
Yeah, what will keep me going back to this more than anything is it is fun to watch with kids.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'll have that when my kids are older too.
That blows their minds, man. I mean, like we watched this the other day with all 3 of my kids. Actually, Freddie and Mikey were both watching it with us too. And like Mikey's 2, he just keeps yelling Spiderman at the screen. That was fun. And Freddie had seen it, but it had been a while, and he's 6, so he didn't remember it very well, and so he didn't know who all was in it, and so it just keeps adding people. He's like, "What is this?" And so I don't know. That's a lot of fun. But I remember the experience I had with it in the theater, and that kind of it's easy for me to think back on that and latch back on it. So like despite my disappointment with Thanos, like getting to see the cosmic stuff finally integrated. We didn't talk about this enough. The cosmic stuff finally integrated with the more down to earth stuff, and just how well that's handled still makes me giddy. The way the Guardians get brought in, and all of the fun levity that we get with like Star-Lord and Iron Man, those are 2 characters that just don't even make sense to put on screen together. Like that's so much fun. When he says your math is blowing my mind, that kills me. It's fantastic.
Yeah, people are saying Age of Ultron. Yeah, I don't have that with Age of Ultron. I've liked that one better each time I saw it. But yeah, with the other ones, the spectacle wears off on me, and I don't go back to them as much. But
yeah, and I have that with some of them, but somehow this one not as much. Like somehow it's the spectacle that still keeps me enjoying this one. I have that with Civil War to some degree too, but I also think that's just a really well told story.
Yeah, I love Civil War. And that's mostly with the first one. This one is, I still really enjoy this one. I had a great time watching it with you. The first one, though, I can't go back to at all. But,
oh, wow. I have no problem going back to that. I think it's excellent.
Yeah.
But there is, one thing that's really nice, too, you mentioned Age of Ultron. The main flaw with that, to me, as I've said a million times, is it feels like I'm watching something on 2 times speed. This and
even television.
This and Civil War do not have that pacing issue. There are places where you wish that characters could be on screen longer and there was more downtime and we could flesh stuff out more and there was room for exposition that we need. But as in a theater going experience, I don't think it has anything close to that pacing issue. It doesn't feel like there's too much gummed into it until I start thinking about it later, and I'm like, oh, because you had to put 50 characters in 2.5 hours, I didn't get like explanations for things I needed.
Yeah, the Russos are definitely really good at pacing these out. Helps that they had like 2 movies to build up, and then they had 2 movies to split this story into.
Well, anyway, DJ, is there anything else you want to make sure that we talk about that we missed? Because there's so much in this movie that we didn't get to.
No, I think I'm good. I think we'll talk about it more in. I say the next one, but there's 2 in between Endgame, so we still got to talk about.
Yeah.
You know what?
What do we have? Is it an X-Men movie next, or what is it?
Is next? I think next is either Ant-Man and the Wasp or Deadpool 2. Maybe Deadpool 2. I think it is Deadpool 2. Yeah, definitely Deadpool 2.
Oh yeah, you know what? It is because Brolin famously was in 2 Marvel things in a row as different characters. Yeah, that's right.
I was saying we have 2 MCU movies between Endgame because we have Ant-Man and the Wasp and we have Captain Marvel.
Oh, so that's true.
If we forgot anything, we'll definitely talk about it in Ant-Man and the Wasp because we'll have nothing to talk about in that one.
That's true. So we have at least 3. Yeah. What are we going to talk about in that? Like house arrest and drumming on electric drums? Like.
Yeah, I don't even remember anything about that movie. That movie went right out of my head as soon as I watched it. All I remember is like him small in a hoodie, and then I remember Goliath because I was like, "Oh, cool, Goliath!" And then he doesn't do anything. Same thing I had with the first movie.
Yeah, he doesn't even get to put a suit on. I can't believe they did that.
I mean, that's the same thing I had about the first movie. The only thing I liked about the first one was all the old Ant-Man stuff, which was nothing. And then the same thing I have with the second one is the old...
Oh, we've even got Spider-Verse before we have Endgame.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit. We've got Deadpool 2, then we've got Ant-Man and the Wasp, then Spider-Verse, then Venom and Spider-Verse, then Captain Marvel's the next year.
So we're going to have 5 movies before we get to Endgame?
It's going to be a while. We're going to forget everything.
Wow. That's crazy. Because it'll all come back to us. That'll be fun, though, because it'll be sort of like in microcosm experiencing that year in between them again. You know, where you have... Because I do love that. I do love that you have this insane cliffhanger. You got to wait a year and you're speculating for a long time. The weirdest thing, we talked about this a lot at the time, was not knowing the title. And then they kept it a secret. It seemed like for no good reason, because it seemed like the point was it's going to give something away. And then when we finally got it, it was, well, okay. Like, of course that's what you called it. Like, you could have told us that weeks after the movie came out.
Yeah.
What would it have even given away to people that hadn't seen it? Like, I don't know if you agree with this. I think you could have said Infinity War and then a year later Endgame before it came out. Am I wrong?
No, I don't.
Would that have been a mistake for some reason?
I wasn't one that was like badgering them to release it because I don't care, and I wish they would release less about movies anyway because I don't like spoilers or I don't like to know anything about a movie, so I didn't care. That I was like, good, finally, you're not releasing a title. But I don't know why, because what is saying it's the end game reveal? I mean, we figured it was the end. I mean, I don't know. It's not.
But
like
see, I wanted it released because they kept. Well, I didn't. If it was going to make a lot of sense that you waited. The thing is, it built anticipation for people, and it felt like they did that on purpose, where it's like, oh, you're not going to believe what the title is. Like, people kept talking about it. That's why I wanted it if it was going to feel generic. And then it did. And it was like, oh, no.
Yeah, Lewis, I know that Doctor Strange said they were in the endgame now, but that's not... Maybe they didn't want... You know that thing you have in movies where they say the title of the movie, and you're like, oh, and you roll your eyes?
Yeah.
Maybe... when they didn't want you in that scene to be taken out when Doctor Strange says Endgame, so they're like, we won't tell him yet.
Okay.
Because then everybody would be like, oh, it's the end. That's the next movie.
But then at least say it a few weeks after, or say we haven't decided what it's called yet, because it's possible that's what it was. That like for a good long time they couldn't decide what they were going to title it, because remember it was supposed to be Infinity War Part 2 for the longest time, and I guess it's possible they didn't have a title until they finally told us what it was. I don't know. I mean, you have to put it on a lot of merchandise, so I don't know.
Yeah, you would think they would have to have something, because all the merchandise is put together way ahead of time.
Mutale wants to know how much I'm going to give this for the rewind. I never reveal that because it's always based on the viewing, and I know I haven't been putting those out lately, so I don't know when that's going to happen. But like, at the moment, it's probably sitting around a 3, but it could be closer to a 3.5. It certainly is not in 4 territory. I can't imagine I would start writing about this and it would suddenly turn into 4 territory, but it's definitely not. It's definitely not going to end up being any less than a 3. I wouldn't think. But I never promised that because it's based on the viewing. So I don't know. I gotta have a really weird viewing with that where I'm like, nope, 2.5, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
Bag Studios just tuned in to hear our title debate. He says, my theory is that they just didn't have a title yet, which is great. The fact that Marvel can just...
No, that would be cool if that's what it was, but they didn't talk about it that way.
Not have a title, and then the internet runs away with it. And they're like, oh, they're keeping this big secret. Why are they keeping it a secret? Let's make a million YouTube videos with red circles. Try to figure it out. Try to solve it. And there's nothing to figure out because they just don't have a title yet. That's amazing.
Is that true? Adam A says,
really?
I remember when the Russos kept telling people the title of Avengers 4 wasn't something that was uttered in Infinity War. That was a lie. Yeah, and you get, unfortunately, lies like that from directors more frequently than you'd like. There was famously that thing Nolan said about his Batman 3 before we knew it was Rises, where he said it's going to be villains that have never been in Batman movies before, and they both were.
Maybe they just didn't consider that Bane or Catwoman.
I mean, okay, but they still technically were like, but that's why everybody's going to, other thing. And then when people were like, oh, maybe it's Riddler, and then other people would immediately go, no, he said it's not going to be anybody that was ever in a Batman movie, and then it's Catwoman and Bane, and you're like, oh, okay. Not that Catwoman's exactly a villain in that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't sympathize with, like, if you don't want them to lie, then don't ask them questions because they have to, because they don't.
No, they don't. No, they don't. They could just not answer them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the same thing. I mean, you're in an interview. You're just gonna be rude and be silent. I don't know.
No. You could say that's giving too much away. I'm not gonna answer it. That's all you have to say. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to give a non-answer. You can just say, I'm not going to answer that. That's what you say. No, I don't agree with that at all. Because I'm vehement about this, man. When we had Star Trek Into Darkness and the people putting that together, I can't remember if Lindelof said this, but I'm pretty sure Abrams did. They swore it wasn't Khan, and then of course it was. No, you don't do that.
Yeah, I don't know. There's no way around it.
There's no way around bold-faced lying?
No, I'm saying there's no way around people taking your words out of context. Like, even if you say, like...
It isn't Khan, isn't out of context.
No, I'm saying if they go the other way, if they say, is the Riddler in this next movie? And if you're like, I can't talk about it, it gives too much away, like you said, then they're like, oh, he is.
Well, that's fine. Then they can stupidly assume things based on what you said. What's the harm in that? Then it gets just really funny when the movie comes out and it's not what they thought it was. Because that's on them at that point. But you are inviting them to run off and guess at other things. And then they're going to be a lot angrier at you. And also, it's just not nice to lie to people. But it's going to be they're going to be a lot angrier at you when they go, well, you set me off on this whole path where I was trying to figure it out, and then it couldn't even possibly been that. Like, people do enjoy speculating. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with speculating.
That's dirty pool, man. That's not playing fair. You don't even have to say it would give too much away. You can just say, I won't answer anything about who is or is not in this movie.
Yeah, you just say no comment.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. I don't mean to argue with you, but I'm not going to get behind anybody bold-faced lying about anything.
I just don't care about that kind of stuff. But I know people are all into the. I mean, they got to get a story for their page, so whatever, let them do what they do, get their clicks.
Well, anyway, Solar Dragon says I need a Captain Logan rant video about the stupid red circle channels. I mean, that's low-hanging fruit. That's probably been done quite a bit, right? Like, I feel like Red Letter Media has made fun of that quite a bit. But if I have a slow day someday, maybe in the middle of a live show,
we'll do a Captain Logan theme show. Only questions about making fun of the Red Circle channel.
Well, we can do a show about why stuff like that is kind of pointless and silly. Not just that, definitely. But well, anyway,
it's just to get attention to your channels would be like, I don't know, like, and it's so like it's so condescending to the audience, like, oh, here's 7 things you didn't catch in Infinity War. Like, yeah, that was pretty basic
and
stuff.
Dude,
like we all
2 out of 5 times the thumbnail is, yeah, I knew that. Well, anyway, thanks a lot for watching, folks. We will see you again in 2 weeks, and you said the next thing is, what did you say? Not Venom. What was it? I've forgotten already. Deadpool 2. And yes, we're gonna watch the theatrical version of Deadpool 2, not one of the 8 other versions of that movie. What's that?
Is that streaming anywhere? I gotta figure out how to watch that. I don't have that.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out a way for you to watch that.
We'll figure it out.
It's probably not on Disney Plus.
No, definitely not. They haven't got any of the R-rated movies. They don't even have First Class yet.
Oh wow, do they not? And I'm sure they don't have Logan.
No, they don't have Logan.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Blue Dragon 5 says, is there any way we can buy your Marvel Mania shirts? Not at the moment.
No, we need to get that going at some point. That was a homemade thing. It just looks really good.
Yeah, my wife just makes these on her printing press. But yeah, there's probably, we could find someone that could do it, like from a company, and they could send one to you. I don't know. We could try that. Before we're done, we're already halfway through the second season of this.
Anyway, we have well overstayed our welcome. We'll see you next time. I was Captain Logan. That was DJ Martinez.